Sitting across from the girl, Duke Theron was impotent. Ian Theron was one of the 3 dukes in the country. He was the emperor's maternal cousin, and the people loved and respected him. The girl had already made a decision, as it was already her second life, and the choice of Duke Theron was not a coincidence. The man asked if the girl was the Duchess of Parnell, but the girl replied that she was Olivia Florence from this day forward. The aristocrat thought that the girl was married to the Duke of Parnell, and therefore did not understand what she meant. Olivia said that the Duke had traded his own wife on the battlefield for the next 10 years. Because of this, she could no longer call him husband. Besides, according to the imperial laws, if there was no first wedding night after the wedding, the 2 could not be considered married. The girl couldn't even see her husband's face, so she was still Lady Florence. The man praised her courage and began to ask the reason for the visit from the aristocrat. The girl told about the song that spread all over the streets of the city and made her life difficult, so she wanted the Duke to take responsibility for it. The man didn't understand what she wanted from him, but Olivia bluntly offered him to marry her. A few months ago, the girl woke up surprised, because she was in the room where he lived in his youth, when she was about 20 years old. Olivia decided not to pay attention to it, because she had to start getting ready for the banquet, in honor of her birthday. Olivia started to ring the bell, but no matter how many times she did it, no one came. She ran out of the room shouting the name of the maid Marie. The maid started to make excuses, but then the heroine noticed that she looked too young. Marie looked as if she had just been hired to be the girl's maid. Suddenly, behind Olivia, came the voice of the first mother-in-law of a girl named Madame Rosaline, who had died 10 years before. Suddenly, they were joined by the second mother-in-law, the Duchess of Whymper. Olivia couldn't believe her eyes and was about to say something, but a third mother-in-law, the Duchess of Ignorance, came running out. As much as the girl tried to deny the obvious, it was real, and she was back in the time when she was still 20 years old. The heroine remembered how she buried her mother-in-law and sat down to rest, but suddenly footsteps were heard outside the door of the room. The maids tried to stop the knight, completely covered in blood, but he did not let them do it. He walked in on Olivia, and she was surprised to see the return of Duke Jace Parnell, who had been her first husband. Presently, everyone was seated at the dinner table, where the first mother-in-law said that heroine had a complete lack of manners, for she allowed herself to hover in the clouds in the presence of her elders. Olivia called the woman mother, but the woman didn't like it. She asked to be addressed as Duchess Parnell too. She was now the wife of the head of the family, and since the Duke was at war, some of his duties fell on the girl's shoulders. Her mother had no respect for Olivia, treating her like a servant and complaining about her lack of respect for her first mother-in-law. The Duchess became furious, as she was unwilling to tolerate being spoken to in such a tone. The second mother-in-law begged to be a little quieter because she couldn't begin to eat. The woman was in her early 40s and the same age as Olivia, so she didn't understand where she was getting so much infantilization from. The heroine said that if the Duchess didn't like something, she could go up to her room and enjoy her meal alone, instead of whining and begging everyone to shut up. The first mother-in-law thought Olivia was out of her mind, but she said she should have set things straight sooner rather than later. Since the Duke of Parnell was not at the estate, heroine's words and actions were far more meaningful than the women's. Olivia asked the Duchess to hand over the management of the finances to her. The aristocrat said that the girl did not know anything about it and would remain an uncouth hillbilly for the rest of her life. The heroine recalled that she was studying at the academy and her major was accounting. Suddenly she remembered that she had more weight, so it was possible to do without the Duchess's permission. The girl ordered the butler to bring all the Duke's documents to her room right away. In addition, she needed to find another spacious room where she could look through the necessary documentation. The first mother-in-law ordered her to take all of hers back immediately, or she wouldn't just leave it like that. Olivia asked the butler to consider who would stay in the Duke's house more. The man decided to clarify the matter with the Duke. The heroine went to her room and began to write a letter to her husband. After some time in the military barracks, the Duke began to read the letter. It said that Olivia was not allowed to conduct household affairs, that she lived in a tiny room and her own rights were infringed upon. The girl asked for the matter to be resolved so that she could soon resolve all of the man's financial matters. There were 3 duchesses in the Parnell mansion. There was the second Duchess Wine, the current Duchess and biological mother of Olivia's husband Ignorant, and the first mother-in-law, who took power through conspiracies and also had influence over the Duke. In Heroine's second life, going back 20 years, she was greatly resented. The head of the Parnell family left the estate in a deplorable state, and so the girl decided to protect her quarters and the peace of her family. Suddenly, the butler handed Olivia a letter from the Duke, and she was overjoyed. However, after she read it, the heroine was greatly saddened because the man told her to obey her mother's. The girl couldn't believe that the Duke remained the same as he had been in her previous life, and her life was now completely ruined. The next morning, Olivia was shivering in bed, remembering that there was no point in rebelling against the duchesses. The previous night, the first mother-in-law had taken the last of the wood for the stove away from the girl, leaving Heroine to sleep in the cold. Suddenly, a third mother-in-law came into Olivia's room and scolded her for not doing anything unlike women. She said that Heroine would soon be kicked out of the estate and that she would be the cause of such an act. Olivia wanted to object, but then she realised that she didn't want a second life with James. In the afternoon in the garden, the girl was thinking how she could get a divorce. James Parnell was the shield and sword of the empire, and his family had served the state for 100 years. There was only one man left in that family, so there had to be a good reason to send James to the battlefield. The girl wondered if she could go against His Majesty's will, for she could not just tell everyone that her husband was impotent. 2 days later, there was a ball where the girl dropped her glass and Jan Tyrone came to her aid. The aristocrat thought it was a chance to attract the man, so she pressed herself against him, telling him to embrace her as he had on that very hot night. Cousin James has been nicknamed Impotent ever since, but Olivia didn't have the nerve to remarry. Everyone in the empire liked the same song, and street performers made very good money from it, though it was mostly sung about the country's celebrities. Olivia decided to compose a similar song that would be a lyric about love that would get stuck in her head. A few days later, her song went all over the streets of the city. Romeo Alcizus asked his assistant about Olivia's letter, because he had done what the girl had asked him to do. Romeo Alcizus was the heroine's best friend, who would later become the leader of their country. Thanks to the appearance of musicians sponsored by the man, her song became very popular. Immediately after it was written, it became a hit among the people and spread all over the world. In a letter to Romeo, Olivia wrote that she wished for this hell, and that divorce was the best thing she could do right now. 3 days later, the Duchess yelled at the girl again, but she made a sweet face and began to calm the woman, trying to solve everything in peace. At the tea party, they talked about the rumours that Olivia was secretly dating Duke Tyrone. The heroine assured that these were just rumours and they should not be believed, but her mother-in-law did not believe the girl and kept yelling at her. Olivia said that such rumours were abnormal because she was in her room all the time. After a while, Jan Tyrone sent a letter saying he wanted to meet in Aramir at 3 in the afternoon. Aramir was the most famous place in the capital that could be found, and for Ian, it was the best place to dispel silly rumours. For Olivia, the situation was not favourable, even though it was difficult, but the girl didn't want to live in hell for 20 years again, so she needed to convince Duke Ian Tyrone. In the afternoon, people saw Duke Parnell's flag on the street and immediately knew that Heroine was the girl from the rumours. As soon as Olivia said she had a reservation in Ian Tyler's name, everyone got nervous. Seeing that the Duke was not there yet, the girl started to ask how much the tea cost. The employee gave the menu, and the heroine decided to take this opportunity to drink tea from the heart. Suddenly, Duke Tyrone came to the table and silently sat down, asking if the girl was Lady Parnell. 3 days ago, His Majesty had arrived at the Duke's house, saying that even if everyone believed those horrible rumours, he wouldn't believe them, because his brother was definitely not like that. The man said that James was now at war, and even if Olivia divorced him, he probably wouldn't come to them. His Majesty gave an example of his happy marriage, how he chose his wife just because of her date of birth. The Duke said he was fine being alone, so he was going to continue to ignore the rumours. The man did not understand Olivia's train of thought, for she was trying to destroy a marriage of convenience made under pressure from the emperor. His Majesty had asked Ian to meet the heroine at least once, and even if he didn't want to, the meeting still had to happen. Currently, Olivia was asking the Duke to marry her. At this moment, the man realized what the emperor meant when he said she was brave. The heroine was satisfied with the fact that everyone called Jan impotent because she said that she did not like bed scenes. The man assured that he was not talkative, boring, and indifferent to all people. He didn't know what Olivia expected, so he warned that the girl would be very disappointed in him. The heroine remembered that Ian had said more now than James had said in a week. The girl said that she had been living as a loner all along, then asked if the man had any relatives other than the emperor. As soon as the Duke confirmed it, Olivia started asking to marry her again. Olivia thought that the emperor was shocked that Ian was his only cousin, who hadn't even considered marriage. The girl only had to change the Duke's mind, so she cried, saying that she was just a simple toy for the man. The embarrassed Ian covered Olivia's mouth, and she began to enjoy the softness of his hands. The girl had already embarrassed him many times in such a short time, so he agreed to talk in a more private setting. The aristocrats moved to the VIP hall, where the girl once again asked the man to marry her. Jan asked me to stop saying that all the time. The heroine did not expect that a man who was not whether serious could be so embarrassed. The Duke asked why the girl had chosen him, and whether she wanted to marry him just because of the town song. The girl recalled that she was now in very big trouble because of the song, as her mother-in-laws were tearing and throwing up. Than to tolerate such behaviour of women, Olivia was already easier to just translate this rumour into reality. The heroine said that she liked the fact that Ian didn't have custodial parents, and the fact that he was not talkative and not interested in women. The girl asked to respond as soon as possible to her proposal, but suddenly they were interrupted by a waiter who brought tea. Ian drank the heroine's drink and agreed to marry her, because he was already tired of hearing the same thing. Olivia thought that she should go home and wait for news from the man. Ian didn't understand why the girl should return to Parnell Manor, as they had already decided to get married, so Olivia just had to go to their future home. The action moves to Duke Ian's estate, where the girl sat and did not understand how everything turned out this way. She hadn't expected this, and the servants were dumbfounded by the news. The man asked them to wait a little, for Olivia's appearance was sudden, so the room was not ready yet. The girl said that she could sleep on the couch, as it was better than the straw she had slept on in her previous life. The Duke didn't know what the rules were in the Parnell household, but as the master of his house, he couldn't have Olivia sleeping on the couch at night. The girl smiled and said that she could sleep with the man, thinking that Jana would not allow that to happen. After a little thought, he asked why it didn't bother heroine that he was impotent. Olivia didn't want children because she had no love for them and didn't plan to have them. In her past life, the heroine had given birth to 2 children, and since the labour was hard, she was at death's door, and her maternal instinct was not awakened. Then James came, and the maid told him that the baby was completely healthy. However, the girl was not. The man urgently needed to leave, so he left everything to the servant. Then she decided that she didn't want to go through this agony anymore, even if she would never see the faces of her children. The heroine told Ian that she understood how miserable the lives of childless ladies were in the Skull years, but still she did not want to have children. Though the Duke took the words easily, Olivia thought the man still wanted an heir. Ian said he didn't agree with the girl, and didn't care what she said. He didn't want to answer the question if he didn't care about an heir or not. After these words, the girl noticed that Jan had no reaction. The man became indignant, because Olivia looked at him as the most pathetic person in the world. The Duke leaned over the heroine, asking where a girl like her had come from to fall on his head. Ian had to mind his own business, as the upcoming wedding would give him a lot of worries. The man promised that they would see each other again soon, and left. The girl wondered if an impotent man could look so attractive. Suddenly, the butler reported that Olivia's room was ready. The girl recalled how James had woken her up one night, not holding back his desire for a little fun. Suddenly, the heroine slapped the man across the face, saying she was sick of him. Olivia woke up, exhaling, for it was just a scary dream. In the morning, Young said that they had to go to the palace as the emperor was expecting them. The maids came in and brought many dishes from the best chefs. The girl was surprised, After all, they had to hurry to go. The Duke said that they were now married, and they should at least have their first breakfast together. The man assured her that everything was fine and the Emperor would understand them. Olivia did not believe his words, as in her memory, His Majesty was an intimidating man. When the girl was just able to enter the high society as a duchess, crown prince status became the emperor. The princess ascended the throne at a rather young age, but the previous emperor did not step aside and stayed to help his daughter, so that she could strengthen her position among the people and nobles. After that, the emperor began to do terrible things, and eventually he carried out a bloody purge among the nobles. Even Olivia's friend had complained about the bad treatment from the previous emperor. It was good for the girl that such a good friend remained in her present life. In the past, their friendship had almost become a weakness that various gossipers had tried to take advantage of. Thanks to Emperor status ascending to the throne, they still continued to be friends despite the rumors about them. The Duke wondered what Olivia would do if he refused to become her husband. The girl told him that in that case, she was simply thrown out of the estate. Since the debts of Florence's family were paid off, the man thought that Heroine could safely return to the family. One day, Olivia overheard a conversation that the Duke of Parnell was willing to pay off the debts as a wedding gift. Viscount Florence was overjoyed that he was able to sell his daughter at a high price. He wanted to use his children for the good of the family so that there would be no more noise from them. Presently, the heroine asserted that she would in no way return to Florence's house. She promised that even if she was in death, she would never cross her father's threshold again. Olivia had said that the man shouldn't have been interested in her family, but he thought that the more he learned about the girl, the more he understood her. Ian realized that Heroine had had a very unhappy life. The Duke suggested that they leave the talk and have a quiet breakfast, for he still had business to attend to. Suddenly, a maid named Romania, whose duties included the house's internal affairs, came in. The woman said that the heroine had a tailor waiting for her, so she should follow her. The Duke said that they needed to appear before the Emperor, and all of the girls' clothes were at Parnell Manor. Olivia didn't understand what Ian was talking about, because His Majesty was already waiting impatiently for them. But even if they left now, they would still be late. The Duke assured that the Emperor was in a great mood, so they could be a little late. The girl agreed with that, and they all set off together to the sweat. The man introduced himself and presented his best dresses to Olivia. The heroine began to think about changing the colour of the dress, but the tailor was not sure about it and wished to consult with Jan. The girl assured that they were not yet married, so their outfits with the Duke should not be similar. The Duke did not object, saying to do everything as the heroine wished. A few hours later, the girl was already in the carriage, thinking that they should have left much earlier. The Duke began to ask if the Duchy of Parnell was poor, as he didn't like the rustic style of the girl's dress. Olivia approached the man, telling him to make sure she had a trouble-free life after the wedding. Upon arriving at the Imperial Palace, His Highness immediately rushed to embrace the couple. Olivia got down on one knee, but the man said that there was no need to observe formalities. Before starting the conversation, the Emperor asked to sign the marriage certificate. The girl couldn't believe that the Emperor had put his seal on it before signing the document. Olivia didn't want additional rumours when she was divorced, so she wondered if the Emperor could somehow solve all the problems with the Parnell house. The man chuckled, saying that Heroine had nothing to worry about, since the Parnell family was the first to send all the necessary documents for the dissolution of the marriage. The man from the duchy brought the documents to the palace, and because the Emperor was worried, he immediately put his seal. Olivia signed without thinking, glancing at Ian, who looked at her questioningly. The man asked the Emperor if he was not going to limit himself to just signing the certificate, but would also organise the wedding. The man assured that the marriage ceremony was necessary, so he would organise everything as soon as possible. Since the Emperor had already agreed, the Duke asked him to allocate the Diamond Hall. The Diamond Hall was just one of the ballrooms in the Imperial Palace, but it was the most famous and ornate. Ceremonies were held there exclusively for the monarchs, and Stathis and Romeo's celebration was also organised there. Hugging Jan, the Emperor agreed to it, saying that if the man was impotent, it would be impossible to pull it off, but with effort, the Duke achieved his goal. The man said that under such circumstances, the wedding would be held next week, and he would ask the Empress to help in the matter. In the garden of the Duke's estate, the man asked Olivia what was wrong, for the latter was looking at him suspiciously. It was suspicious to the heroine that Ian's uncle was feeling very worried about him. The man assured that it wasn't his fault, and that the Emperor had been bored lately, and his mood was getting worse. Now the couple needed to determine how they would address each other. Olivia offered to leave things as they were, but the Duke lifted the girl's hair, saying that everything would be as his favourite wife wished. The girl remembered how cold James had been to her, and she no longer wished for anyone to call her wife. The Duke approached the heroine, whispering in her ear that from now on he would call her Olivia. The girl bounced away from Ian, for she considered this stunt unacceptable. The man thought it was too late, so the couple held hands and went to the estate. Soon after that came a letter from the Imperial Palace, which said that the marriage ceremony would take place in 2 weeks. In order to keep everything on track, everyone in the mansion and palace was up in arms, and the maid in charge of the house was arranging everything for Olivia. The heroine broke into Jan's room, saying that she too wished to take part in his affairs. She had experience in this, for she had previously been involved in such matters as the Duchess of Parnell. The Duke wished to object, but Olivia reminded him again of her vast experience, and that the Empress had only taken everything on her shoulders. The man didn't know what to do, so he stood up, saying that he had to go, after which he asked the maid to take care of heroine. Olivia was about to leave, but suddenly the Duke came up to her, fixing her hair, which was slightly out of order. The girl thanked Ian for such a remark. Then she became very embarrassed and went out the door. At night, while sorting out her papers, the girl asked the maid to contact the Parnell family. The heroine needed them to return all her things before the wedding. The maid began to object, for she was quite sure that the Parnell family would not like it. Olivia wanted to get her dress back, so she ordered the woman to offer to buy back her things, but for a minimal price. The maid couldn't understand why the heroine would once again want to put on her old wedding dress that she had already married in. But Olivia assured her that they didn't have much time to create a new one. They could alter it a little, and she would be completely different, so they shouldn't have worried. The woman believed that wearing an old dress was a bad omen. Marriage in that dress ended in divorce, and Olivia continued now to save the marriage, but at the same time she did not have a cosy family hearth. The heroine assured that all these are all ordinary omens, and they will not affect her happy future in any way. A few days later, the girl received a letter stating that her in-laws had not bargained and had accepted the price that had been set, so they were returning all of her remaining belongings to her. Olivia had written to the Parnell family, only to receive a necklace that reminded her of her mother. Her family was poor, and she had nothing to take as a dowry, so all she could get was a necklace. On that note, the heroine decided to finally say goodbye to the hated Parnell family. At night, when Olivia was already asleep, the Duke came to her room and began to scrutinize her in every possible way. To him, the girl's actions were abnormal. She had a funny and awkward smile, but she was dignified, sweet, and polite, strictly following the court etiquette. It was as if Olivia had been present in social society for a long time, feeling like a fish in water. All investigations about heroines said that she didn't stand out at all. In her student years, she had a couple of friends, including Romeo Alkizis. The girl was trained in the accounting department and never studied court etiquette. She was not appreciated, and the Duke paid no attention to Olivia. Ian didn't understand who the girl really was, and he was confused by Olivia's necklace. In the Duke's opinion, the heroine was savvy, for she was able to hide the jewellery behind the purchase of a wedding dress. The man leaned into the girl, saying that he was looking forward to their wedding. A week later, everyone gathered for the wedding ceremony. Olivia was nervous, though it was her second wedding, but her last one had been awful and lonely. Ian approached her, worried about her, because she looked very sickly. Duke thought the girl was in pain, but she just stood there, trying to hold back tears at the memory of the previous wedding. The man pulled out his wedding ring and gave it to Olivia, saying that no matter how economical she was, she couldn't wear her previous engagement ring. The heroine thought this statement seemed logical, since the second ring was on the battlefield. But suddenly, Jan began to say that he did not mean that. The Duke put the ring on the girl's hand, after which the girl was surprised that it perfectly matched the size of her finger. The man said that he had taken the measurements from the heroine's finger long ago, but how exactly he had done it was a secret. The butler came in, announcing that Ian was to greet the guests. The Duke leaned into Olivia's ear and whispered softly that they would see each other later. The heroine was uncomfortable with the fact that Ian joked with such a nonchalant face because she thought that he was something like James. But as it turned out, she was very wrong. The girl didn't know if her mother would approve of the second wedding, but still Olivia decided to do everything not to miss her gift of fate. The ceremony began, and the priest was already reading out the vows, but the heroine did not stop looking at the expensive flowers. The girl did not invite her father to the wedding, because in this life she did not want to have anything to do with this man, as they still remembered that for him she was an ordinary thing. The heroine thought her father was useless, so as soon as she had the chance, she had to get her sister out of that house. Ian started to ask what Olivia was thinking about, as it was rare for someone to be thinking about someone else when they were standing in front of him. The man said that if the girl had a lover, there was still an opportunity to choose him instead of Jan. The priest said that it was time for the vows, from which the heroine was surprised, for there had been nothing of the sort at her first wedding. The Duke said that he did not know how to share, so he would not give his woman to anyone, after which he kissed Olivia. The aristocrats enjoyed the Diamond Hall, saying they were sorry because the Duke was now married, and they wanted him to remain a dream for all women. The wedding was a success, and Olivia's father, Viscount Florence, was kicked out of the palace. The news began to say that former relatives from her ex-husband's side were absent. The maids had not seen the newlyweds, so one of them thought it was time for a wedding night. Another girl said that, as for an impotent man, the Duke had kissed heroine quite deftly, so the rumours might have been false. Everyone wondered if Duke Tyrone, who was dubbed impotent, would be able to have a successful first wedding night. Olivia Florence no longer existed, so as a wife, she needed to know the answer to the question that everyone was wondering about. Olivia walked out of the banquet hall, where Jan motioned for her to go home. The girl thought they needed to greet each guest. James had been absent from the last wedding, but Olivia had greeted all the guests, and if she hadn't, she would have gotten a lot of abuse. The Duke said that the Emperor would take care of it all, as it gave him great pleasure. The heroine did not like the man to be so frivolous with his majesty. Ian didn't think that the heroine was the right person to say such things to him, because at the first meeting, she had been very glad that he didn't have parents. The girl apologised, but the man was not going to take offence at her, because he was only glad that his parents were dead. The Duke started to leave as Olivia suddenly stopped him, for their transportation was in the other direction. The man said that this night they would spend in the Imperial Palace, as His Majesty had personally taken care of it. The heroine began to think that the Emperor loved Jan a lot, but the man was sure that there was another motive behind this care. The man didn't want to wait, so he took Olivia in his arms. The girl said that they could go slowly, because they would go to bed anyway. Sitting up in her room, Olivia was coming off her worries and was rolling around with fatigue. The maid escorted the heroine to her bed, after which the girl went straight to bed. Suddenly the girl noticed that her clothes and blanket were too vulgar, and now she understood why she had been dressed so carefully. Olivia believed that the Duke would not get under her blanket, and they would go to bed in silence. Suddenly the Duke came in, dressed in a robe, which made the heroine wrap herself in the blanket and try not to look at his body. Olivia assured him that she had a strong desire to sleep, but Ian asked her to open her eyes, because they still had one more thing to do. The man asked her to remember what the heroine had said when he had called her Duchess Parnell. Suddenly the girl remembered that according to imperial law, if the first wedding night did not take place, then the marriage itself was not valid. The man didn't rule out the possibility that Olivia would decide to leave him for her lover. Ian kissed the girl, after which he said that now they needed to focus on making their marriage valid. The girl didn't understand what the Duke was talking about, since he was impotent. Ian reminded her that he had never said such a thing. The man started to pull down the blanket, but suddenly the girl saddened, saying that she didn't want children, for she was greatly afraid of giving birth. The Duke hugged the heroine, asking her not to worry about it, as he didn't want children either. That's why he didn't say anything about it. The man began to get under the girl's dress, and suddenly Olivia felt something strange. Jan did not feel anything like this before, because the girl had a beautiful figure. The heroine said that now the problem was that the Duke became aroused. It was not the will of the man, and he could not help himself. Olivia couldn't make up her mind, and was about to leave, but suddenly the man embraced her, saying that he wanted her. The Duke once again reminded that the girl had nothing to worry about, and then they began to enjoy their first wedding night. In the morning, Heroine called Jan a fraud, as he simply ignored the rumours about himself. The man had already told Olivia that he wasn't the kind of man to flirt with every girl he met, but looking back, the Duke realised that the girl had been rude to him, and he hadn't even said a bad word to her. It was strange for Heroine to think that Ian had been alone all this time in his 20s. The Duke had gotten Olivia so easily, despite the fact that she was mean to him, which meant that the man liked her. Ian revealed that he had really fallen for the girl. At first he liked the heroine's type and her eyes, and then he liked the terms she offered. Olivia had previously said that she didn't want children, and she was brave, confident, and not greedy for money. In a panic, the heroine asked what a man would do if she stole all his possessions and ran away. Ian should not have drawn such conclusions, as it was unwise. The man liked Olivia's sincerity, for with her she was like a child. The Duke wanted to take her to bed again, but she was embarrassed, saying she was hungry, and they couldn't do it in the middle of the day. Ian had to step away for a while, and in the meantime, the girl was being helped to change her clothes by the maid. Following the Duke, the heroine could not believe that he had brought her to a state where everything hurt, and then said that the man wished to do it again. Suddenly, the couple met the Emperor, who asked the girl joyfully how she had slept today. The Duke kissed Olivia, from which His Majesty was indescribably delighted. The Emperor asked not to worry, as he was not going to have breakfast today, so the couple was not late. He did not resent Heroine at all, for she was their saviour and had restored their faith in their nephew. The Emperor was worried that Yang would be impotent, that he had run to his manor at dawn. The man said that the couple might not leave the bedroom until sunset, as he had no intention of disturbing them. The Duke said that he would not comment on it, but the Emperor backed him up, telling him to stay out of the conversation with the lovely saviour. At the moment, the man was only saved from being beaten by his title of Emperor. His Majesty offered to give the couple a star palace, but they were about to leave. The Emperor reminded him that no matter how beautiful the Duke's wife was, he had to attend the meetings. The man left, and Jana put his arm around the girl, saying that the food had long since gotten cold, and we would have to wait again, so they could eat in their room in comfort. Olivia thought they would just eat, and nothing could go wrong. After a while, the girl called Ian an animal and a cheater. As soon as they got to the room, Duke noticed that they still had time before breakfast, after which he undressed and enjoyed the girl. The man said that their marriage was fictitious. Besides, Olivia herself turned to him. The heroine realised that Ian knew something, so Romeo did not have to suffer. She was near the Duke only thanks to her friend, who fulfilled her request and spread the song. Seeing the girl's pensive face, Ian asked if they were going home or staying a few more days in the palace. Because their room was designed for newlyweds, it created a special mood, so the girl couldn't go to the Duke's house right away. Jan was ashamed to admit it, but he wanted to stay longer in the imperial palace. The girl jumped in, saying that they should draw up a marriage contract. First, they had to use birth control, and second, they had to remain faithful, loyal, and honest in marriage. The most important thing for the girl was to keep the number of times down to once a week. The man didn't get the joke, however. Olivia wasn't sure yet, and was a little afraid to sleep with him. The heroine said that the Duke was not a bad man, and as a wife, she would do everything in her power. Ian hugged the girl, assuring her that this wasn't the kind of relationship they had, so he wouldn't force her and hurt her. He wanted to give Olivia happiness and joy. Because of that, no circumstances that would make her afraid would never happen. The man asked not to worry, because that last point was something to think about. The Duke wondered who had instilled this fear in the heroine, her father or her lover. The girl said that she had never had a lover, after which Ian was very glad because he was terribly jealous. The action is transferred to the times when the heroine was still studying at the academy. Olivia approached James, asking where the admissions ceremony would be held. The man wasn't very social, so he was shy to ask the girl's name. He had only been at the academy for 2 weeks and had never been able to learn Olivia's name. Suddenly, James woke up because of the wounds he had received in the battle. The soldier told him that the man had been unconscious for a week and all the spies had been captured, but this time the situation was too heated. During the sword fight, the Duke was betrayed and tried to be killed. They were now in a border area where a conflict with an enemy country was unfolding. The recent battle was caused by the capture of an informant who kept leaking data to the enemy side. Suddenly, the man noticed that his ring was missing. No one on the border battlefield knew of the ring's existence. Sword-wielding warriors did not wear rings, for it was very inconvenient, but James never took his off, though he never saw his wife's face. The soldier said that the ring was badly damaged and was being repaired. While the Duke was unconscious, he received letters from his uncle, as well as from the imperial family. Opening the envelope from the palace, the man was astonished, for in it lay a certificate of annulment of marriage. The soldier said that it was all mere rumours, so he did not tell James anything at once. Rumours spread across the country that Lady Olivia Florence and Duke Ian Tyrone were dating, and as soon as the Emperor heard about it, he decided to support this relationship. James didn't understand how an impotent man could marry heroine and how they could dissolve their marriage without his signature. In the letter, the man's uncle insulted Olivia, saying that she disgraced the honour of their family, so they expelled her from the house, and he was also going to return the money that had previously been given to Florence's family. Such a letter made the Duke furious, not wanting to lose his wife. Jan brought heroine to his estate, and she began to remember her past, but now she could start from scratch in her new home. The Duke offered to drink tea in the garden, but the girl felt sleepy, and she refused. Under the circumstances, the man wanted to rest in their common room. The Duke approached the girl, saying that they were already at their home. The girl pushed him away, reminding him of the agreement, but the number of times was not yet certain. Olivia said that she agreed to 8 times, but that now Ian would not pester her and would keep a distance of 2 meters. In the room, the girl pondered the man's unseemly behaviour, but suddenly the maid handed over an urgent letter that needed to be read immediately. The letter from Florence's family said that the money they had gotten from heroine's marriage to James had been taken back, so Olivia had to solve the problem. The girl recalled that her father, Viscount Florence, was the worst kind of father. He had a business, but he did business dirty as he was full of vanity. Then the business failed and his debts increased. He used Olivia to pay off his debts and even sold the girl's younger sister to a drug dealer. Fortunately, the heroine has gone back in time, and that hasn't happened yet. In her return letter, the girl said that it wasn't her debt, so she wasn't going to help him. Olivia's sister Annie was now 14 years old, which made heroine want to save her from the swamp she was in at the time. At Florence's mansion, the Viscount was furious at being asked to return the money because of the dissolution of the marriage. Suddenly, Annie came into the room to deliver a new letter. The man was about to hit the girl, but noticing that the letter was from Olivia, he immediately began to read it. Viscount was sure that the heroine would not be able to pretend that she did not belong to Florence's family, but the contents of the letter left the man stunned. Noticing another letter from Olivia in the girl's hands, Viscount took it away. The girl wrote that in 3 days she would send Annie a carriage on behalf of the Duke of Tyrone. At this time, the Duke was reviewing the documents, chuckling continuously. Chief Counsellor Kenin thought that Jan had started to go crazy, but he just couldn't stop thinking about a certain thing. His wife forbade him from touching himself and wouldn't allow him to come within 2 meters of her. The man was charmed by Olivia's cuteness when she said things like that. Kenin couldn't believe that the Duke, who didn't like touching, was displeased by it. The aide asked Ian not to be distracted, for he had a report to read that mentioned Viscount Florence. The counsellor told him that the Viscount had sold his daughter to pay off his debts and was now asking for money again. The Duke realised that heroine's father was in trouble, for he had decided to pay back the money because of the annulment of the marriage, and now he couldn't pay his bills. The man didn't understand why Duke Parnell would do such a thing, since he had never seen Olivia. The councillor offered to give the money to the Viscount, for Ian was too proud to discuss it with James directly. The Duke said that the girl was not a mercantile woman, remembering all her words. All the helpers began to rejoice as Young finally created his happy family. Kenin thought it would never happen, for the man was firm in his unwillingness to marry. However, he did change his mind. At first, Herzog was discouraged when he heard the town song. He just decided not to pay any attention to her. Only the heroine and songwriter happened to be Olivia. The girl looked at him as if he was the only one who could save her. After the explanation, Ian ordered everyone to get to work, while he would go on a date with his wife. In the evening, the heroine did not understand what was the matter, for her maid had said it was time for dinner, and she had just followed her. The Duke proposed to spend some time together. The girl said that she had come down to just have dinner, so now she needed to change her clothes. Dressing up in her room, Olivia thought the sudden date looked childish. Suddenly, the Duke crept up behind her, saying that the girl was already beautiful, which meant it was time for them to depart. Getting out of the carriage, the heroine wished for some delicious food and was surprised when they found themselves near a jewellery store. The situation was very strange, plus the store had a VIP room, so Olivia was a little worried about her body. The man was worried about her wife wearing the same necklace all the time, and he just wanted the heroine to wear what he would give her. The girl asked not to be disturbed, however the man insisted. A woman came out, greeting the aristocrats, saying that their order, lapis lazuli cufflinks, had arrived. The Duke said he was sorry, because today he had not come for his order, but to pick up something worthwhile for his wife. Olivia thought that Ian wanted to give her one necklace, but he asked to show them all. For the next few hours, the Duke didn't stop looking at absolutely every item in the jewellery store. The girl didn't want to be in Jan's debt, saying that she wouldn't be able to use it all and would choose only 5 pieces of jewellery. The man ignored heroine, asking her to pack everything for them. Olivia didn't understand why Duke was so stubborn and why he did whatever he wanted. Suddenly Jan looked bad, and the girl started to call a doctor. But suddenly the man said that when the girl was angry, his heart was filled with joy. Ian apologised for his behaviour, but they had to visit an important place soon, and he did not want to be in an uncomfortable position. The Duke wanted the girl to try on her new necklace with emeralds, but Olivia did not want to take off her jewellery. Once the Duke thought that the girl's necklace was connected to a dear person, the girl told him that it was a gift from her mother. Arriving at the restaurant, the man said that the new earrings looked gorgeous on Olivia. Because of the girl's necklace, Ian felt like Olivia's mother was right next to them, so as a son-in-law, he was a little worried. Earlier, the man's reaction to that necklace had been quite different. It was strange for heroine, but Ian looked happier now. The girl reminded the Duke that she had done exactly as the man had said anyway, so she shouldn't have bought more jewellery. Once inside, Ian informed them that they would be taking the seat he always reserved, after which they headed to their table, through the layers of conversation about their marriage. Suddenly, the girl noticed the aristocrat who was staring at her intently. However, the girl paid no attention to it. Olivia took her husband's hand, saying that she was very hungry after shopping. Already in the carriage, the girl remembered how much she had enjoyed the dinner together with Jan in that magnificent restaurant. The Duke was a good man, but sometimes he behaved like a man possessed. He was kind and sweet, like the type of person who step by step disposes of himself because he respects people's feelings. Olivia wanted to have a serious talk, saying that it would be about her little sister. The girl was responsible for her and asked that she at least be sent to a decent boarding school. Olivia promised to cover all the costs of the school from the allowance she had as Duchess. They could not leave Annie with the Viscount, or she would be doomed to an unhappy marriage. 3 days ago, the heroine decided to invite her sister to visit them to hear her story. The girl asked not to be disturbed, for she just needed to know how she was doing. The Duke said that he was not going to be a nominal partner for Olivia. The heroine chose Ian as a fictitious husband, but in fact she could break off the marriage with the Duke and marry anyone, because there was no difference. The Duke also knew nothing about the girl and hastily accepted that proposal. Eventually, regardless of the reasons, they got together and became spouses. The man asked Olivia not to say such things, because if it was her sister, she was also his family. The girl said that the problem was her father, and she didn't want to deal with it for long. She wished to keep the Viscount as far away from her as possible and never see him again in this life. The man said that the heroine could ask him to do that, saying that a simple thank you would be enough. Olivia didn't want Ian involved, so she decided to figure it out on her own. It was her long-time dream, so she had to realize it on her own. 3 days later, in the girls' room, a maid asked her why she was wearing a completely different outfit than usual. Today, as planned, was Annie's first visit. It was obvious that Viscount would come with her, for he would never miss an opportunity like this. Olivia had interrupted the letter for Annie in the middle, without telling her everything, and her father had interpreted it as he saw fit. The reason she chose a dress of a rich colour was because of her father, as he hated such colours. The girl left the room where she met the Duke, who had been waiting for her for a long time for them to go down to the carriage together. The Viscount was surprised that Olivia was indeed the mistress of Tyrone Manor. Suddenly a couple came out, and the girl started asking Annie about her life, after which she added that she had only invited her sister. The letter was meant for her personally, so the heroine pretended to have no idea how the man knew about it. The girl's father started to lash out at Olivia, but Duke stood up for her. The girl asked Ian, along with Annie, to step away for a while. The heroine asked the Viscount not to get upset, saying that he could have been immediately thrown out of the estate as an intruder. Annie was worried about her sister, as her father didn't know how to control his emotions and could hurt Olivia. Duke asked not to worry too much, as Heroine was a strong girl, and while they were communicating, the girl could tell Ian about her life. The Viscount did not understand how his submissive daughter turned into an independent girl. She had become a duchess who epitomized the wealth and prestige of the house. The man was excited to meet Jan, and although it was just a way for him to earn money, he didn't think the Duke would be as stingy as his daughter. Entering the greenhouse, which was designed by Duchess Sunday, Viscount was amazed by its beauty. The man pretended to be happy for the girl, for he was now living in luxury, but she said that she had not brought him to such a place to show off her wealth. As a newlywed, she couldn't show her husband the outrage, so she brought her father to the greenhouse. Olivia received a letter mentioning that the man needed to pay a debt to Duke Parnell. The girl ordered her father to leave. She had already said that the Viscount had not been invited to the mansion, and she had no money, and if she had, she would not have given her father a coin to pay his debt. The man didn't understand what Olivia was talking about, for he had compromised his pride and come to her for help. The girl had nothing more to say to the Viscount, and she hoped he would never come to her with this question again. The man grabbed Olivia's arm, telling her that their family was doing very badly because of this debt. He said that he would be sure to pay off the debt, however the girl should have thought of her sister. The heroine ordered her father not to lie about her father's love for his daughter, because it wouldn't work on her. The girl saw the bruises on Annie's body, so she did not understand how the man dared to raise his hand on a small child, and acted as if nothing had happened. Olivia said that Annie would stay with her, and she would secure her future, and that Viscount should leave the mansion sooner rather than later. The man began to accuse the girl, for he thought she wished to get away with it, keeping her cool, cleverly hiding her true identity. The Viscount was about to strike the heroine, but suddenly guards jumped out of the bushes and put swords to the man's throat. The girl said that earlier she wished to maintain their communication, but now he was not going to do it, so Viscount had to leave the manor immediately. The man began to run away from the mansion, thinking that he would not leave the girl alone and would one day take Annie and get the money. Meanwhile, Jan told Annie that Olivia wished the girl to live with them, and soon she would go to school, so she needed to prepare the necessary things. Annie couldn't believe what was happening, because when her sister married the Duke of Parnell, her father had major problems. The Viscount felt that Olivia was now a stranger to them, so the girl wondered if it would be all right if she lived with Heroine. The Duke noticed that Annie was worried about the girl, so they went to her, and he was going to show the girl the estate. The lovely house and the beautiful garden were something the sisters had never dared to dream of. The The girl was worried when Olivia said that she had married Duke Tyrone because there were terrible rumours about him, but he had been kind. The heroine looked happy, so the girl was very happy about it. Suddenly, Viscount came out of the bushes, telling Annie that it was not safe here and they'd better go back home. The man assured the girl that her sister had invited her to the estate only to use her in her plans. Olivia wanted to stop Viscount, but the Duke asked to wait a little because the girl had to make her own decision. Remembering her past with her father, Annie decided to stay with her sister, and if she didn't do it now, she would regret it for the rest of her life. The Viscount began to insult his daughters, as suddenly the Duke grabbed the man's arm, saying that there is a limit to all words. The girl's father decided to leave things as they were, promising that one day he would make of regret today. The girl was sorry that not Olivia and Duke were in trouble because of it, but the girl asked not to worry about it. Ian said that Enna didn't burden him, because she was part of his family. In the evening, Olivia praised her sister's ability to play the violin. The girl didn't know if she could touch the instrument, but Heroine was a housewife, so she could borrow anything. Enna didn't understand how her sister knew that tune, because she thought Olivia wasn't interested in music. She used to say it was a waste of money, and the lesson fees were high, so they couldn't afford to go to a concert. The girl was embarrassed at her bluntness. The girl congratulated her sister on her second marriage, for she was glad to meet her brother and to know that her sister was living the life she wanted. Ian had given her a comfort that the girl had not had in her previous life, so now Annie had to be happy too. Annie was surprised to see her mother's necklace on Olivia, because before the girl said that, she would not wear it because it was old-fashioned. The heroine rarely wore this necklace, but the real reason was that the jewellery was irretrievably lost, literally thrown out the window, and it could not be found. The girl did not want to upset her sister, so she said that the necklace went well with the clothes. Suddenly Jan came, and Olivia began to suggest the next day to go shopping, because now the girl lived in their estate, and she was going to need a lot of things. The girl grabbed her head, saying that she had a sudden headache and was just tired. Olivia was convinced that her sister had a fever, but Annie thought she should just get some rest so they could go shopping with her brother tomorrow. The next day in the carriage, the girl could not understand when Annie had become so close to the Duke. The man immediately changed the topic of conversation, asking where they would go first. Olivia already wanted to name a store, but then she remembered that Goshu's store didn't exist yet. Department store Goshu was going to be opened in about 10 years, as the first empire store of this type. Its founder was a foreigner, which was why the store had such an exotic name. The owner said that he was a subject of the Oz kingdom and had come to the empire to search for his lost daughter. Justifying herself, Olivia said it would be a good idea to stop by the clothing store. They arrived at the section for teenagers. Besides, the heroine noticed that the Duke had a sense of style and chose things well to emphasize his figure. The girl told the counsellor that they were looking for things for a 14-year-old girl, but suddenly Duke said that they should not look for something specific, because they were buying all the dresses of the store. Sometime later, the saddened man asked Olivia why she had refused everything he had chosen. The heroine thought that all these things were useless, and that spending money was a waste of money. The Duke said that only people with limited finances used wasted money, but he had a lot of money, so he spent it thoughtfully, especially the money he spent on his wife. As soon as Olivia agreed to buy 5 outfits, the man suggested that she change her hair. Suddenly the girl remembered the aristocrat from the restaurant and decided to find out if the Duke liked curly hair. Hearing a negative answer, the girl was able to calm down for a while. At the estate, Heroine had to sort out a lot of gifts. Ian was too worried and flaunted his feelings, so the girl had to subdue his impulses. Olivia loved Annie, but he couldn't spend so much money on her every time. They went through all the stores one by one, and the girl thought that they were wasting time and money, because if they gathered all the stores in one place, they could save a lot of time, and at the same time objectively evaluate the things they were selling. Olivia approached Duke, suggesting that he set up a business. Having discussed the idea, the man was pleased with the girl's proposal. Goshu's department store was a store of an unusual format, as it gathered various things and items, all in one building. The reaction of the nobility was ambiguous, because for them it looked too vulgar. Kenin thought the idea was amazing. But the land prices in the capital were already so high that he wasn't sure if the department store would be profitable. There was a lot of investment needed in the first stages, so only the Duke of Tyrone could help with that. If Olivia had suggested such a thing in the Duchy of Parnell, they wouldn't have even listened to her, and it would have been taken for granted. Kennin asked how the girl had come up with the idea, and she told him that she had always wanted to be able to buy everything she needed in one place. The assistant was dazzled by the girl's genius, promising to serve her for the rest of her years. Later, Kennin assured that it was an ordinary joke and he is forever loyal to Jan because he pays well. In the evening, Heroine suggested that Annie prepare herself. She thought that the girl looked through the catalogue of schools and selected those in which she wanted to go to study. Annie was worried, but there was still time to think things over carefully, so they could take their time. The girl wondered why, if her sister and brother-in-law were newlyweds, they hadn't slept together yet. Olivia did not want to answer, and because of that the girl went straight to the Duke to clarify the question. Ian was very surprised by the girl's visit, but Annie did not hesitate, saying that she came to him because she had a very important question. The girl needed to choose a school, but she was very worried, so she came to ask the man for advice. Duke quickly chose a school that had a great reputation and a comfortable environment. Olivia was pleased to see Annie shining now, not the way she used to when she was around her father. Seeing the heroine follow Annie, she didn't understand why the girl was following her. The girl said goodnight and pushed Olivia into the Duke's arms and said that now she would sleep with her husband. Since Ian had promised that he would not touch the girl until she was ready, a lot of time had passed, and there was a lot of work to do, so the girl could not think it over. The man began to ask what Olivia was thinking about, but the girl responded by questioning the Duke's opinion of Annie's waywardness. Ian assured that the girl was just worried about the heroine, and that she was not alone in that. Annie was concerned about how cold the relationship between husband and wife was. Olivia wanted to just wait until Annie reached her room and then retire to her own, but the man didn't want to let her go, as he was sure he wouldn't be able to sleep. He had waited a very long time for this moment. Plus, Olivia kept teasing and tempting him. Jan began to ask if the girl really still needed time to think about it. Heroine had an aversion to intimacy, but now she was unsure. Since Olivia didn't answer for a long time, the Duke asked her to sing a lullaby until he fell asleep. The man thanked the girl for the song, saying that happiness was just around the corner. She felt the same way when her happiness was far away. Olivia cried, and Duke became very concerned. Olivia was happy to the point that she wondered if it was normal. The next day, Romeo was reading a newspaper in the mansion of Alquissus, after which all his excitement about his friend's marriage was gone. A servant informed him that the young man had a visitor and that he refused to wait for him, so he was led directly to the aristocrat's study. Suddenly James appeared in front of the young man, and he fell into a daze. In her room, Olivia was reading a letter from Romeo, saying that he was very happy for the girl and would visit her soon. Kennin knocked on Heroine's door, wanting to discuss the blueprint for their project. The girl was surprised by the man's responsibility, however. She did not like some areas in the blueprint. As soon as Kennin heard that the building was to be 5 stories, he had some doubts. Among the ornate aristocratic mansions, buildings taller than 3 stories were rare, so the man simply did not expect the department store to be 5 stories high, as he was guided by the standard parameters. Kennin thought that it would be very expensive to build a building several floors higher, and that the length of the department store could be increased in order to optimize costs. Olivia said that in that case it would look ridiculous, because at first there would be very few salespeople in the department store. The girl assured that this building would become an imperial landmark. A lot of money would have to be invested in the beginning to make it a dizzying success. Kennin did not like the idea, and wished to reconsider it thoroughly. The Duke was so demanding that the man didn't have a minute to spare. Suddenly Jan walked in, and seeing Kennin standing next to Olivia, ordered him to move away immediately. The girl said that the building should be tall. However, Kennin did not agree with this. The man couldn't hear any sounds coming from the room, so he wondered if Olivia was all right. The counsellor assured him that he'd only leaned into Heroine, but Duke didn't believe him. There was still the matter of naming the department store, and on top of that, they needed to get a building permit from the city department. Olivia hadn't thought about a name yet, but she couldn't use the name Gosha either. Suddenly, Jan suggested that they called the department store Martini, saying that it sounded very solid. Kenin was about to leave, but suddenly the Duke added that the Emperor's birthday ceremony was to be held soon, and they should get ready. At his last conversation with the Emperor, the Duke questioned him if he was really going to look after that child. The man replied that Ian was wrong, and then left afterward. At first glance, the Emperor seemed distracted and emotional. In fact, he was very calculating. Although his and the Empress's only daughter was the heir to the throne, he had several children by other women as well. Many of his concubines were admitted to the palace for political reasons. The Empress was characterized by a quiet and calm temperament. She did not make jealousy scenes and did not show her displeasure. The concubines who had given the Emperor sons looked down on her, but she was trampled by one man, and he was Prince Status. The Emperor said he met with the prince to choose a companion for him. He was a girl, and that was not favourable to a man in terms of appointing an heir to the throne. Stathis had to get rid of anyone who threatened her position by locking them in a dungeon and breaking all their limbs. The girl said that she eventually settled on Count Romeo Alkizus. Unlike the Count, the other candidates' courts were blonde, so the Emperor thought that the girl had chosen Romeo Alkizus because of his different hair colour. The man started talking about Ian Tyrone, however Stathis did not like it. The Emperor, who did not spare even his own children, favoured only Jan. The man said that the Duke wished to visit the palace with his wife and greet the Emperor, so they had to meet them together with their new companion Stathis. The girl wasn't interested, but otherwise she couldn't see her bride's face until after the engagement ceremony. In the meantime, Olivia was pleased with the new design of the manor. Since Annie was now living with them, she needed to set up her room and make sure she saw less of the Duke. The heroine felt strange because she thought too much about Jan, and the sound of his voice made her nervous. Besides, she could not look into the man's eyes without trembling. Jan approached the girl from behind, embracing her, but she recoiled, for her heart almost jumped out of her chest from embarrassment. The man was sad that Olivia had been avoiding him the past few days. The Duke suggested they go to the store together and choose clothes for the upcoming celebration, since the couple's clothes had to meet the dress code for such an evening. Usually the wife was in charge of the outfits and ordered clothes from tailors for important events separately. Suddenly, the butler announced that the couple had received a letter from the Imperial Palace stating that this Thursday, the Crown Prince, Earl Alkizus and Duke Tyrone were to be present at the Empress's palace. The girl was glad that Romeo was also a companion of status in this life and wanted to see them soon. A few days later, the couple went to the palace. The Duke noticed that Olivia wore a different dress than the one he had chosen, but the girl said that she could not wear an evening dress for a family feast. Time passed too quickly, and Heroine regretted that she hadn't gotten a chance to talk to Romeo. All of her current beautiful life had only come about because of the young man. The Duke asked Olivia not to worry, though he didn't know the exact reason, but he thought it might be fun. The girl didn't understand why it should be fun. Then Ian said that the heroine definitely wished to see someone at the family gathering today. Olivia began to worry, thinking that the Duke knew who actually composed the scandalous song and spread it throughout the empire. Ian said that the girl should worry about Prince Status. Although he was straightforward, he was not the best person. The couple greeted the prince, after which he spoke of how sorry he was that he couldn't attend the wedding, as he had so much to do that day. The prince was surprised that the wedding was held in the Diamond Hall, though he knew that the emperor favoured the Duke too much. Ian said that His Majesty cherished Stathis and her beliefs because he still considered her a child, so they should have buried their hatchet. The prince noticed that even though the man had married, his arrogance hadn't gone anywhere. Things got heated and both began to bring up each other's shameful past. Olivia assumed that they had been friends since they were children, but the two of them denied it. Olivia thought that even if they weren't friends, they looked too much alike, and the difference in their ages was small. The prince reminded her that if it hadn't been for the Marquis of Whitefall, this accident wouldn't have happened, and they didn't even recognise each other. In Olivia's past life, the Emperor needed to deal with House Parnell, even though she and Romeo were friends. Now they couldn't be openly friends, and even just talking to each other was difficult. Suddenly, the emperor appeared, and hugging the girl, he said that he hoped she had been pregnant for a long time. Olivia sat down, saying that she was definitely not pregnant. The emperor had previously wanted to meet his bride, so he sent Duke Tyrone a letter, but before he spoke to him, an Ian said that the girl was not well. If the man knew how things were, he wouldn't have prepared a congratulatory gift. The Duke thanked him for the gift, saying that they were not thinking of children yet, and just wanted to enjoy each other's company. The prince said that if that was the case, no smoke would even come out of the chimney, for he had heard that Jan's body was so weak that it could not even conceive a child. The man suggested that the emperor give his gift to the crown prince, since he would be getting married soon. Olivia didn't think that Stathis would have children soon. The emperor listened to everyone and decided to introduce the future empress, Count Romeo Alkaizus. There was an awkward atmosphere, and Olivia asked if this was the first time Stathis was seeing Romeo. It wasn't the first time the prince had seen him, for she had a choice of several candidates, and he was one of the list. In the end, the choice fell on a man with a different hair colour than Stathis. The heroine could not believe that marriage seemed very easy for the members of the imperial family. She thought that the other candidates would be brought to the palace as favourites. Since Stathis was a female emperor, she would not only be legally married, but she would also have several concubines on top of that. The prince wondered what was new with Duke Tyrone, who had made so much noise in the empire with his marriage. Ian had said that they had married because they loved each other so much. Marriages for love were uncommon among the nobility, so it seemed strange to Stathis. The emperor ignored the aristocrats' bickering and began to ask Olivia about the name of the trading house she planned to build. The girl whispered to the duke not to spoil the atmosphere with strange speeches, and helped her by simply saying that they hadn't decided on the name. Ian, without thinking long, said that their department store would be named Martini, and it had been his wife's idea to build the mall, so he thought he should name it after her. The butler informed the emperor that it was time for him to bow out, whereupon he said goodbye and left on business. Stathis was tired of sitting in the palace, so they all decided to take a walk together. In the garden, the duke began to argue with the prince again, as suddenly Olivia was pulled back by Romeo's hand. The man had something to tell heroine, but it was hard for him to grasp the right moment. Romeo said that in fact, the news about the girl's wedding was in the newspapers, so he knew everything, and in letters Olivia wrote about it. Heroine was much happier now than when she was living as the Duchess of Parnell. Romeo asked not to be surprised and to listen to the end. The man started to say that Olivia's ex-husband was now in the capital, after which the girl asked if she could help her friend. Romeo asked not to worry about him, assuring that everything would be fine with him in the end. Suddenly, Ian appeared, not understanding what Count Alkaizus was doing here. Later, Olivia was very embarrassed, for then Romeo stood as if stiff and could not raise his eyes. Now James was in the capital, but in his past life, at this time he was on the battlefield and had never appeared in 10 years. The Duke asked Ollie what she was thinking about, but the girl could hear the sarcasm in his words. The man was unbearably sad, because his wife did not allow him to address her by her cute nickname, as his wife's friend did. The heroine liked to be addressed by the name Olivia, because earlier she had almost forgotten what her name was, as she was always called names before. Since Ian was her closest person, she wanted him to call her by her first name. The Duke, overwhelmed with joy, hugged the girl, saying that he was happy that he was a special person to her. At that moment, Olivia was convinced that she could put her life in Jan's hands and follow him to the end of the world. His wealth and fame, status and looks didn't matter to her, for she believed that the Duke was a real man. The girl finally said that her preparations were complete and they should try to become more intimate with each other, so she put everything in the hands of a man. The heroine kissed the Duke, after which she said that he should know that she is very jealous and quickly gets attached to people. The girl did not want there to be any misunderstandings between them. After all, Romeo was her best friend. Ian knew this. That's why he decided to invite the Crown Prince and his bride to their mansion. Olivia wondered if the man was really so close to the Crown Prince, but to him, she was only a naughty little sister. The girl was very worried that the crown prince would not make Romeo happy. Jan said that there was no need to worry about that, since Romeo was chosen because of his hair colour. The Duke had previously assumed that he had been chosen because of his status, but he would never have thought that the real reason would be so ridiculous. The couple relaxed and began to enjoy the nature. The prince walked by with Romeo, and the girl didn't like how cute the couple looked. Roles for members of the Alkizus family were defined from birth. The eldest son inherited the name, status, and family business. The second son was to be the cold and calculating assistant to the first brother. All three brothers had to carry the burden of the Alkizus family in their own way, but one could not turn into a woman with just one wish. In the end, the head of the family changed his decision, saying that Romeo was now obliged to become the son-in-law of His Majesty the Emperor, and that was the only way he could help strengthen the influence of the House of Alkizus. In this house, everything was decided for the young man, and then it happened that he and Olivia became close friends. The heroine saw Romeo as a separate person with his own desires, not a means to achieve goals. Once at the academy, Olivia approached the young man, asking if he had ever been to the Kingdom of Oz. When the girl heard that he had not, she was annoyed, for she believed his family had a trading relationship with them. Since Romeo wasn't there, Olivia suggested that he go there after graduating from the academy. The girl said that she really needed to go there because her father was there. The heroine said that her necklace was a keepsake from her mother and that her father was definitely from the Kingdom of Oz. Then the young man promised Olivia to take her there, but the day he kept his promise never came. The heroine became the Duchess of Parnell right after the day of graduation from the academy was set, and then she asked to spread a strange song through all the streets of the capital. Even after that, Romeo did not keep his promise to take the girl to the Kingdom of Oz. When James came to the young man, he said that he wanted his wife back because she was being cheated. The man asked to arrange a meeting so that he could talk to her in person. Currently, Stathis was saying that when everyone was looking at her, she was worried that they only wanted to gain her favour. Romeo didn't think that he was much different from similar people. The prince said that he didn't know how to build a relationship, but she couldn't lose to Duke Tyrone. Later, the butler said that the prince had long since left. The Duke couldn't wait and was about to go home when suddenly the Emperor appeared behind them. The man immediately remembered the gift in honour of Olivia's future pregnancy. The girl opened the box and found in it a beautiful diadem. The heroine couldn't accept the gift, but the Duke insisted not to refuse it. Suddenly, the Emperor coldly recalled who had given the name to Jan, after which he said that he was glad because he had really put his heart into the gift. In the carriage, seeing the Duke's pensive face, Olivia asked him to tell her what was really going on between him and the Emperor. The girl was sure there was a special bond between them, so he could be the Emperor's son. This story was too long, so the man wasn't sure that Olivia would be able to accept everything he would tell. No one had ever heard of Ian's secret, yet the girl didn't think she had the right to know about it. The heroine said that she could not use the tiara because it was a very valuable thing, which could not even be sold, and in addition, they would not have children, so they could not inherit it. The man was amused by this thought and asked why the girl did not want to have children. Olivia wondered if the Duke would accept whatever she said, but he realised he'd fallen for his own trick. Ian offered to try on the tiara because there were only 2 of them in the carriage anyway, and no one would see. The girl tilted her head and closed her eyes, but the man did not put on the tiara, but just kissed the heroine. When Olivia put on the diadem, the Duke could not take his eyes off her, speaking of her indescribable beauty. In the room, the girl was about to go to the bath, but the Duke stopped her again and started kissing the heroine. The man recalled that the girl had talked about her fear of intimacy, so he wondered why she had changed her mind. Olivia was embarrassed, saying that it was because she loved Ian. The man put the girl on the bed, and after undressing, they began to enjoy each other. Afterwards, the Duke said that meeting the girl was like a dream, and if he had ignored that letter, they would never have met. The heroine also sometimes thought about it, pondering what would have happened if she had decided to stay with Duke Parnell or ran away to a convent, but then they would never have met Ian. In her sleep, James kept calling her. Olivia told him that it was over, because he didn't know her at all in this life anyway, so he needed to stop being stupid. In the morning, Olivia felt very sick, and her whole body ached a lot. She didn't like this relationship with Ian. After all, they were just doing it, but her body was in constant pain. The girl wanted to take a bath, and suddenly the man offered to wash her. Olivia did not order the Duke to go to her room, but he could not leave the tired girl alone. Ian washed Heroine and carried her to the bed, where it turned out that her spine was cracked. Olivia was pleased with what they had with the man. However, after this she forbade Ian from entering her room for a week. The man really wanted to see the heroine tomorrow, but she didn't have as good stamina as he did. The girl could faint from overexertion. The Duke eventually agreed, but he was sorry he couldn't spend time with the girl as often, so he suggested that she come to him on her own. At breakfast, Olivia received a letter from Romeo, in which he felt strongly about what had happened at the palace. Then Stathis gave the young man a quick kiss, after which he cried. He had previously believed that his first kiss was to be in a perfect marriage. Romeo arrived at the Duke's house, and though he was uncomfortable, he hoped that James was not deceiving him. The man began to ask when he would finally be able to meet his wife, but Romeo immediately said that he rejected James's request and that Olivia desired marriage to Duke Tyrone. Romeo wished the girl happiness as a friend, so he wasn't going to help the man. James insisted that Heroine had been deceived, for he saw no point in marrying a man who was impotent. The young man said that a child was not a necessary and sufficient condition of marriage. The Duke left, and it was only afterward that Romeo began to wonder how he knew they were best friends. On the Emperor's birthday, Olivia was told about her beauty, but she was sure it was just talk. Suddenly Jan came in, saying that the heroine was belittling herself, and she shouldn't worry, because they would be together. The Duke was very excited as the girl was too beautiful. In the carriage, Olivia asked the maids not to whisper in her ear anymore, for they wanted Jan to restrain herself, at least a little. The girl was not yet accustomed to such persistent interest, but she realized that she should not push the Duke away. Previously, Duke Parnell had not been interested in Heroine at all. There was no one to help with her appearance, so the girl picked up outfits by herself, but she still couldn't attend any events. Ian began to ask what the girl was thinking about and why she was upset. The man now wanted to look into Olivia's red eyes, because they could be misunderstood later. Suddenly, the Duke got excited right in the carriage, and the girl had nothing left but to help him. The maids began to worry, because it had been a long time since the aristocrats arrived, but they did not come out. Stepping out of the carriage, Olivia's makeup was completely ruined. Later, the girl expressed to Ian that now she would not be able to live in peace after such a disgrace. It was nothing to the Duke that they did it in the carriage, but Olivia did not stop yelling at the man. The Emperor was watching from the window, saying that there was no need to bring the Tyrone family, as they would soon see him themselves. The action shifts to 20 years ago, when the previous emperor informed a man that his mother would soon have a child. His Majesty did not know when he would leave this world, so he asked to take care of his mother and brother when that time came. Later in his office, the man was very angry with his father, not understanding how his old man, even towards the end of his life, was doing crazy things. As a young man, he bathed in pleasures, taking alcohol and hallucinogens, and did not deal with the affairs of state at all. So before his death, the emperor took a young girl as his wife and conceived a child for her. The man realized that if a brother was born to him, he would just have to get rid of him. Presently, the emperor ordered that Jan be brought in. The Duke recalled that the girl was interested in his relationship that tied him to the emperor. According to him, Olivia was thinking in the right direction, and she was right about something, because she and the emperor had a certain connection. He had originally wanted to take that secret to his grave, but today the emperor could make an interesting announcement, so the heroine needn't have been too surprised. The butler announced that the Duke and Duchess of Tyrone had arrived at the ball, and then the two began to make merry at the festivities. They couldn't avoid excessive attention, but if the girl started to worry too much, she would repeat the mistakes of her past life. Olivia said that she was already a little tired. Then the man offered to take her to the restroom. The heroine immediately guessed what the Duke really wanted, which made him blush. Aristocrats for the first time saw such a yarn, because they did not think that they had a marriage for love. Rumour had it that their first wedding night was like a fire. Suddenly, Olivia saw the same woman who had been in Amaranth. She wanted to ask Jan about that woman, but suddenly the butler announced the arrival of the emperor. The man greeted everyone and announced that Prince Status and Romeo Alkaizos had decided to get engaged. The priest came out and the ceremony began. The Crown Prince's engagement had never been so simple, as if he wanted to marry as soon as possible and relinquish his claim to the throne. The couple exchanged rings, after which the emperor asked what Stathis would do if another heir to the throne challenged her. The prince said that he would proceed carefully so no one could defeat her. The emperor said that he actually had more unexpected announcements to make, and he needed to let everyone know an old secret. The man said that Duke Yang Tyrone was actually his younger brother. Because of his greed, the emperor couldn't make the right decision in the past, so he should have regained his status as a duke. Thanks to his daughter-in-law, he had made the right decision, and it was a pity for him to take away everything Yang could enjoy if he were a member of the imperial family. In Olivia's past life, Ian remained Duke Tyrone, and he never regained his true position as a member of the imperial family. But now that the heroine has married him, the emperor has changed his mind because the duke has a family. The man thought it was easier for his brother to kill him, and now he is grateful that he can live a happy life. The heroine realized that the tiara given by the emperor meant that Jan would be declared a member of the imperial family. His Majesty said that he was granting Jan the title of Grand Duke, and he would be given possession of the land of Rolands. From that moment on, Jan became the crown prince of that land. Since Olivia was now the Grand Duchess of Tyrone, the emperor asked her to be magnanimous to the people of the duchy. Suddenly, James began to protest about it. That's when the heroine realized that she wouldn't be able to escape unhappiness after all. The girl began to remember that the Duke never gave his opinion on anything, not about changing the interior of the mansion or the outfits she wore. No matter what Olivia did, James had always only wanted to enjoy her body. Presently, Duke Parnell was ordering heroine to approach him. Ian covered Olivia with him, reminding the man that she was now his consort, so James was in no position to call her wife. Duke Parnell had said that he hadn't signed the document dissolving the marriage, which meant it couldn't take effect. James was on the battlefield and didn't take the birth seal with him. Olivia was sure her 3 former mothers-in-law were behind it, and for the sake of kicking her out, they'd put the divorce seal in James's place. For forging the seal of a noble family was punishable by 10 years in prison. The women were to be punished for their crimes, but the girl didn't think James would let that happen. The man said that the sinners who dared to abuse Duke Parnell's seal without permission had already been apprehended. The heroine thought that the aristocrats in that crowd just wanted to watch the spectacle, so it could have been just an act. Ian assured her that even if James was telling the truth, he and Olivia were now an officially married couple. James assured that under the circumstances it was bride theft, but Duke didn't believe him. This was a very strange situation indeed, because the wedding was official, but now it looked ugly. It was getting dangerous, as the name of the ruling family could be hurt. Olivia noticed that the James she knew wasn't as assertive, as if she were facing a different person. The Emperor had said that Ian had done nothing wrong and had formalized everything properly, and had done it all for Olivia's sake. His Majesty had asked him to calm down, but James was sure that without the insults, he wouldn't have a chance to try to make things right. The Duke told Ian that if he did not return the heroine, he would take her by force. Stathis considered the man's words as insolence and brought her sword to his throat. Today was the Emperor's birthday, so the prince had asked to choose another day for a private conversation. Stathis promised to remain an impartial observer no matter what the outcome. Everyone dispersed, and Olivia began to think that Ian resented her and now thought he'd made the wrong choice. James had 3 rules that were more important than anything else. One of them said that he was ready to sacrifice everything, but never let the heroine go. The girl overexcited and fainted, but the Duke managed to catch her. Stathis showed up, and Ian thanked her for her help, for James was acting like a man possessed and would not calm down. The prince thought it strange, as he and Olivia were a married couple only on paper, and had never seen each other, but the Duke acted as if they were lovers. The man put Heroine to bed already in the manor, but she was tormented by what had happened. In her dream, she saw her family, and then James, who had run out of patience. Suddenly Olivia woke up, in a very sad mood, but Ian hugged her and began to calm her down. The man said that the heroine showed her courage and did a great job, as she escaped from that mansion at the first opportunity. The Duke wanted to get closer to Olivia, so he thought that this situation could help them, because they could get to know each other's strengths and weaknesses better. Ian took care of his wife and bought her expensive gifts, because he had become dependent on her. The moment James had called Olivia his wife, the past had enveloped her. But more frightening was the fact that he'd addressed her as if they'd known each other for a long time. For all that, they had never seen each other in this life. The heroine apologized for marring their first appearance at the official reception. Ian said that their first official event had been a wedding, and there was only one person worthy of compassion right now, so he wasn't to be pitied. Olivia thought the man would say that they needed to break up, but he assured her that he couldn't ever break up with her. The Duke allowed to check his feelings as much as he wanted, because he really loves the girl. The couple began to kiss, and the girl already began to undress Jan, but he was worried about her, because they had a very hard day today. The heroine herself wanted it, wanting to forget herself in the hands of a man. Ian was pleased to hear that, but the doctor prescribed rest, saying to make sure the girl got a good night's rest. The Duke promised that he would watch Olivia all night, after which he began to sing the lullaby he had heard from Heroine. The girl fell asleep, and Ian, kissing her, went to get ready for bed. At this time, James unlocked the cage and looked at his mothers with disdain. The women understood that the Duke was angry, but there were things that could hurt their duchy. For the sake of the duchy and the honour of the Parnell family, Olivia was being humiliated. She was a daughter-in-law without a dowry who didn't even listen to her in-laws. James asked which of the mothers had placed the seal, whereupon the women blamed it on the Duchess of Ignorance, saying that she was sure James couldn't punish his mother, so she did it. The first mother-in-law admitted that they took the seal to validate the dissolution of her marriage to Olivia. The woman claimed that the girl had asked for a divorce first, and she'd gone to live with Duke Tyrone before the marriage was dissolved. James believed that Olivia wasn't the type to do such a thing, believing that Jana was to blame. The first mother said that the Duke finally had nothing to do with Olivia. As head of the clan, James needed to return north and complete a mission that all future generations would be proud of. The woman asked not to worry about a second wife, saying they would find a suitable one. It was strange to her that the previously perfectly obedient Duke was behaving in such a way. She needed to send James north, where he would cool down and turn from anger to mercy. The Duke said his mother really didn't know him, for the one who had asked Olivia Florence to marry him was himself. The mission of which the woman spoke, he had agreed to undertake for his wife's sake. Suddenly, a letter arrived from the Tyrone family, where Olivia asked the man for a meeting to clear things up. The next morning, the maid said she'd poisoned the letter directly to Duke Parnell, but he wasn't sure she should be alone with him. Romeo came to visit the girl, asking for forgiveness, because he did not think that James could be so stubborn. If the young man knew that the Duke would do so, he would have told the girl about everything earlier. Ian began to say that for the sake of keeping himself in pristine condition, Romeo should treat his wife politely. It was the first time they had seen each other since the ball. Ian was busy with business and finding out what had happened. They exchanged congratulations, and then the Duke asked if Olivia had really known Romeo since the academy. The girl assured that in any case, Romeo was not to blame. But the young man kept thinking that if he had told everything earlier, Olivia could have been better prepared. The heroine recalled that the young man had already warned her that James was in the capital, but then she did not believe his words. She assumed the man had been fighting up north the whole time. Olivia couldn't imagine James showing up like that at a birthday party, so it wasn't Romeo's fault. The girl decided to dine with the young man and asked if Ian would join them. Suddenly, the maid announced that another guest had arrived. As Olivia approached the entrance, she was greeted by the Emperor. The man asked her not to make any rash decisions and not to leave the Duke to go back to James. Olivia was glad, for she thought Ian would take offence to her. However, There was not a single accusation against her from the Duke. Hearing that the heroine had no intention of leaving Ian, the Emperor welcomed the girl into their family. Olivia began to realise that she urgently needed to make one last deal with James. A few days later, Olivia was going to meet James at Aramir. It was a smart choice, because most of the tables there weren't hidden from people's eyes, and it was because of that that she and Ian became the main topic for rumours. Now Ian and James were in the capital at the same time, so all the public attention was focused on their relationship. The girl chose the brightest dress and went to the meeting. In Aramir, the aristocrats were not happy that Olivia should now be called the Grand Duchess. The heroine was already tired of it, and if she and James had talked from the beginning, this sort of thing wouldn't have happened. Olivia thought that Duke was a puppet in his mother's hands, and she hadn't expected such behaviour. The waiter respectfully escorted the girl to the table, where James had been waiting for her for a long time. The man called the heroine his wife, but the woman ordered to address her appropriately, Grand Duchess Tyrone. The Duke could not accept that Olivia was no longer his wife. The waiter brought cold water, and heroine began asking about the affairs of the troops in the north, while their commander was in the capital. James had already captured Gale, the head of the Celts, so even in his prolonged absence, all was well in the northern lands. Olivia couldn't believe it, though in her past life the Duke had subdued the Celts, but it was to happen only in 5 years. Suddenly, a terrible memory came over the girl, and she felt very scared. James said that he'd been in a hurry to get back to Olivia to see her. The girl assured him that it couldn't be, since they hadn't even seen each other once, but the man said that he would still consider her his wife. James was sure that Getzrog Tyrone was sincere with the heroine. Olivia believed that Ian had always been honest with her and had spoken words of encouragement. He always whispered something sweet in her ear when she was at a loss. Olivia had doubts and suspicions about Ian, but now she knew exactly how serious he was. The girl gathered her thoughts and told James not to dare to say such things, because the Duke was always sincere with her. The man did not understand how Olivia could live a happy family life without children, because such a family is incomplete. Thanks to such judgments, the heroine should have been the happiest woman in her past life, as she had 2 sons. Olivia jumped in, saying that she had offered to meet because she wanted to hear arguments, not to make excuses, after which she poured a glass of ice water on James. The heroine asserted that their relationship was long over and had been a mistake, so they shouldn't see each other anymore. The girl left, and Ian, who had been watching all of this from a distance, resented James's stubbornness. Kenan asked what the man would do now, but the man had already promised Olivia that he would stay out of it. Ian jumped up, saying that he wouldn't arouse suspicion if he returned before his wife. The Duke returned to the estate, however. Olivia had long been in her room. Lying on her bed, the heroine recalled a conversation with a man who didn't understand why the girl had done such a thing and still married. It was hard for Olivia to be James's wife, and the divorce brought her great relief. The girl did not understand the claims of the Duke because he did not help her in any way, and when she received a letter from him, it was written in it that Olivia obeyed her mothers in everything. The heroine followed her mother's advice and left the Parnell mansion, so their relationship with James ended long ago. Suddenly Annie came into the girl's room, and in order not to upset her younger sister, she began to ask about her day. The girl had heard what had happened during the reception, and that her elder sister and brother-in-law had looked very silly, and she could not even utter a word. Olivia realised that Annie had come since she'd been worried sick about her. The girl assured that it was normal. That's why she came to see if her sister was depressed. After that, the heroine started asking her sister about her life again. Annie was very surprised at how well her older sister knew her. She didn't even know that Annie had a talent for herbalism in her previous life, and now she found out about it too late when the girl arrived at Tyrone Mansion. Olivia told her not to worry about what happened at the reception, because they would stay at Tyrone Mansion. Annie wanted her sister to be happy because she too had suffered a lot. The heroine also wanted her sister to be happy, so she never had to make her mistakes. Olivia realised this clearly through her meeting with James. Later, the girl asked Kenan to find a man who had been connected to Annie in her past life. He worked in the capital's informant guild, and his name was Eric, had black hair, dark eyes and was about 15 years old. The counsellor assumed that the girl wished to follow what was going on in the Duchy of Parnell. Olivia assured him that she hadn't intended such a thing, and that it was simply the boy's scars that were the fault of Florence's family. The girl wanted to provide compensation for Eric. The scars on the boy's face were indeed left by Florence, the family's maid. Eric and Annie had a good relationship, but no one could have imagined that the beggar boy would one day pull her out of hell. Eric was the one who saved Annie from the drug addict her father had sold her to. Because of their different backgrounds and upbringing, they had a long way to go. At the moment, Olivia wished she could help them. The girl said that James wasn't very talkative, so it was impossible to get much information out of him. Kenin walked away, not understanding how Olivia knew this trait of Jam's. In his office, Ian mulled over Duke Parnell's words, deciding to force him to surrender even if he didn't want to. The man heard Kenin come into his room and began to say that he had done a good job, but there was a part that didn't fit into the calculations. The man asked to hand him the papers and was surprised when the man took his hand. Ian tore his gaze away from the document and saw Olivia in front of him, suggesting a little walk. On the street, the Duke began to ask what the girl had put in her purse when she went to meet James, because she looked heavy. Olivia blushed and admitted that she had brought the tiara that the Emperor had given her. The Duke thought it was cute, but the girl ordered him to stop laughing and follow her. Olivia dragged Ian to the greenhouse, as there was much to see there that night. Entering the greenhouse, Ian was amazed by its night beauty, but he was more interested in what the bed was doing there. The Duke hadn't expected the girl to change so drastically, and now he was sure he wouldn't be able to fall asleep quickly. Olivia lay on the bed and she felt like she could reach the stars with her hand. The girl remembered that the Duke had earlier asked her to sing him a lullaby, but she wasn't very good at it, so she decided to tell him a story about constellations. The heroine began to point to the sky, saying that if you combine some stars, you will get a swan. Suddenly, Olivia noticed that Ian had long since fallen asleep. Ian Tyrone was a man who appreciated and respected her. He always gave heroine support and stayed at her side no matter the situation. He had the strength and power to subdue the girl, but he didn't take advantage of it, which is why she didn't want to go back to Gems. The next day, Olivia was a little sick. They had spent the night together in the greenhouse, but for some reason, it was the heroine who was sick and lying on the bed, while the Duke remained perfect. The man wanted to lean over to the girl, but she asked him to stay away from her and go take care of business. Jan didn't understand how he could go to work when his wife was sick. Suddenly it hit the man, and he suggested that the girl share her cold with him. The Duke began to kiss Olivia, but suddenly Kenin knocked on the room, and she pushed the man away. The girl began to wonder what had brought the counsellor to her. Kenin had delivered the person Olivia was looking for, and was now waiting in the living room. The girl came out to the boy. The latter immediately realised that she was from Florence's family. They had not seen each other for a long time, so the heroine thought that he would not remember, because most of the time he and Annie spent together. For more than a decade, Eric's heart belonged to Annie, and it was he who saved her from a nightmare. The girl apologised to the Duke for not putting him on notice. She asked Kenin to find this boy to thank him. Olivia wanted Ian to help Eric become a knight. The man was dumbfounded by this request, so the heroine thought it was foolish to hope that a child without proper skills would be accepted right away. Ian thought for a while and said that it was not difficult and he would take Eric under his wing. The boy didn't believe that he would be accepted, but then Olivia reminded him that he was going to buy the title with money anyway. The awkward boy who ran errands for the guild was rewarded years later with a title, all because he wanted to be a worthy husband for Annie. Olivia asked Eric to become a great knight and protect her sister. Later, in the heroine's room, Duke asked why she wanted to thank Eric. The girl said that the boy was the one who saved Annie in the past, but the maid threw a flashlight at him when she saw him. Olivia was only giving Eric a chance to be near her sister, but going forward, it would depend on his actions. Olivia asked Ian to help, but she was afraid they wouldn't find common ground. The Duke asked if heroine really wanted the boy to be her son-in-law, since he was a commoner, with no relatives or family. It was paramount to the girl that Annie be with someone she truly loved. The heroine began to thank the Duke as she thought a lot while she watched these children. If the man had not accepted her ridiculous desire for marriage, she would have lived a miserable life. Ian hugged the girl, telling her that he loved her a lot. The girl's throat went dry and she moved away from the man. The Duke assured that Olivia needed a strong medicine, after which he filled his mouth with water and kissed the girl again. The man became aroused and suggested that they do something interesting. At that time, Kenin told Eric that he could stay in the capital, but there was already enough manpower there. There was a basic training and then an exam to pass, and if the boy became a junior knight, he would be sent to serve in the duchy. Under such circumstances, he would never be able to leave this place again without permission. The councillor wanted to show the boy the apprentice housing, but suddenly Annie crashed into him. The girl was surprised to see Eric and began to ask Kenin who it was. Olivia told him that the girl had been a benefactor to this young man, so she must have remembered him. Being around the heroine sometimes made Kenin feel uncomfortable, as if she saw everything one step ahead, as if she came from another world. The councillor told Annie that Eric had come to them to become a knight. Seeing the boy's paper cut, the girl became worried. To Eric, Annie was still as kind and considerate as she had been when they first met. At night, Olivia couldn't sleep, for her condition had worsened after her lessons with the Duke. The heroine wasn't allowed to get discouraged yet, as she wasn't done with Annie yet. The girl needed to prepare for her father's possible return. Olivia sent a letter to her brother Philip Florence and went to sleep. In the middle of the night, the girl woke up and saw Ian's sad face above her. The Duke hugged Olivia, for she had slept very soundly and for a long time, lying as if dead. Ian thought it was his fault, for he kept silent, for he loved the stories the heroine told him. If he had known how it would end, he would have carried the girl into the house. Olivia was angry that the man hadn't slept then, whereupon she fainted, and the Duke began calling for a doctor. Later, Kenin revealed that news had come in about Duke Parnell, but Ian asked to talk about it after Olivia was better. The girl dreamed her mother handed her a necklace that was her only connection to her father. The woman wished Olivia to be happy, after which she died. The maid noticed that in her dream, with tears, the heroine asks for egg porridge. In the morning, the Duke brought Olivia egg porridge and a necklace that was connected with oars. Concerned by the girl's request, Ian asked the maid to find the recipe for this dish, and that's how he learned that egg porridge was Or's traditional food. Besides, the heroine herself said that the necklace was a memory of her mother. The stones used in the jewellery were mined and cut at Orsay. Olivia confirmed the Duke's guess, saying that she was indeed not the biological daughter of Viscount Florence. The girl didn't know much about her birth, and she guessed that her father was from Orsa only by small mentions from her mother's stories. For some reason, she conceived Olivia before she was married, and heroine had no support in her life but her mother, and her already unwed father had accepted her into Florence's family. So for a long time, the girl could not refuse to carry out his instructions. Ian understood how hard and lonely it was for the girl, for he knew what it was like to keep the truth about her birth a secret. At such a young age, it was impossible to do anything or complain to anyone. The Duke's heart ached as he thought of how much Olivia had suffered. The Duke revealed that he was actually in a similar situation. He was one of his brother's obstacles to his brother's unified rule. Fearing that his position would be shaken, the Emperor sent Ian to the childless Duke Tyrone, but he ended up making the Duke and Duchess unhappy. They quarrelled constantly because of Jan, and then, when they were riding together in the carriage, there was an accident, and after that, the man was sent to the Marquis of Whitefall. But there too, there was an accident, but it was because of him. The Duke had the same thoughts that all the accidents in the house were his fault, so the man decided to stay alone. He was afraid that the people he cared about would have to go through the same thing. Olivia hugged the Duke, saying that all the misfortunes were long behind her. The girl felt much better now, because in the past she had told her secret only to Romeo, because he was the only one who could take her to Oz. Even if Olivia doesn't find her real father, or can't get to the kingdom of Oz, her most amazing husband will always be with her. 3 days later, the heroine was fully recovered, although the attending doctor scolded her a little, but Jan didn't blink an eye at that. Olivia thought it was unfair that they both slept outside and had a lot of contact, but she was the only one who got sick. The man said that he had a strong body, and it was very good that he was healthy. The girl asked what was so great about it, and immediately Ian remembered what was spelled out in their contract. It stated that they were to have 5 times a week, so they were to have fun tonight. The heroine took offence at the Duke and ran out of the room, when Ian shouted after her that he was always at the girl's disposal. On her way out, Olivia met Annie, who had just returned from the academy. The girl told her that recently she had met a night apprentice her age at the mansion. Although it was amazing, Olivia still had things to do with Viscount Florence. While she was lying in bed with a cold, she received a letter saying that the man would have to stay on as a counsellor for a while longer. Olivia was pleased with the news about her father, so it was time to get on with other things. There was a reason why the heroine asked for a letter to be sent to her brother when she wasn't feeling well. Philip Florence had signed over all of Florence's property that was in the capital to himself. Just as Olivia thought, all the men of Florence's family were greedy egotists, and they saw nothing around them but themselves, so the girl was well aware that once she interfered, they wouldn't leave it like that. Since relations within the family had soured, heroine should have acted more cautiously. The maid came running and asked her to come down to the entrance. When she came to the entrance, Olivia saw a lot of flowers, the smell of which gave her a headache. Jan came running in and assured her that he had not bought anything, and then the maid handed her a letter from Duke Parnell. James had heard rumours that the girl wasn't feeling well, so he wished her a speedy recovery. Olivia was furious and ordered all the flowers to be picked up and sent back. She had already guessed what the headline would be in tomorrow's paper. The Duke asked for calm, saying that everyone already knew who had delivered the flowers to heroine, so they should have just handed them out to people instead of sending them back. Olivia still hadn't recovered from her illness, and because of that, strange thoughts were going through her head. Ian assured her that everything would be fine, and he could tell when Olivia was angry or happy, and how she blushed when she was excited. The girl became embarrassed and ran to write a letter back to Duke Parnell. The man stopped her, saying that the Crown Prince had sent him an invitation to the palace. He wanted to meet in 4 days. Olivia finally understood why James had sent her flowers, but she didn't know why the man was so obsessed with her, since they hardly ever saw each other. The girl was beginning to think that the man also had a second life, but later she didn't think it was possible. The servant reported that they had given out all the flowers, but there was one bouquet left, which was from Lady Whitefall. Olivia realised that the girl belonged to the people who had raised Ian after the Duke and Duchess of Tyrone died. The heroine asked her husband about the aristocrat she had met at the Emperor's birthday party. Duke revealed that the girl was the daughter of the Whitefall family, after which Olivia realised that they had a troubled relationship, but the girl looked at Ian very determinedly and burned through heroine with her burning gaze. Olivia recalled how Man had suggested that she change her hairstyle, which had made her furious. The heroine realised that her appearance was completely opposite to that of the Duke's first childhood love. Ian became embarrassed, which made the girl realise that it was true. At the palace, the Emperor read the note about meeting in 4 days, then began to ask James when he planned to return to the north. The man wasn't going to leave until he got his wife back. The Emperor had broken his agreements, so James saw no point in continuing to stick to them himself. The Emperor recognised his mistakes, but he felt that the man couldn't blindly blame him. After all, he hadn't told him anything. The Emperor once asked the Duke if he really wanted to marry Olivia, since he didn't even know her and had never met her. James assured him that it was fine, and she would be a gift to him. The Emperor didn't think there was a special reason for choosing heroine as his consort. If he had known James had feelings for her, he would have hesitated. The Duke said that he just didn't want to broach the subject, but the Emperor asked him to cut the crap, because in reality, Olivia Florence hadn't spoken to him before. They weren't even acquainted, and now the Emperor couldn't do anything to Duke Tyrone's happily married wife, so he wanted James to back off. The man decided not to give up, saying that if the Emperor didn't do what was necessary, he would solve the problem himself with his own methods. At that time, Olivia thought that Jan was connected to the Whitefall house something else, and it seemed that the aristocrat had feelings for him. The heroine did not know why she was reacting so keenly, because she understood everything with her head, but her heart did not give her rest. The maid reported that the Duke was in his study, before which he had ordered the butler to dispose of the bouquet. The girl asked for it back, and after a while it was delivered directly into her hands. The blue forget-me-nots in the bouquet meant, in the language of flowers, "Do not forget me." High society used the language of colours to convey secret messages. Olivia thought Ian wasn't going to respond to that message, so she had nothing to worry about. The man didn't even look at the bouquet properly, immediately ordering her to throw it away. Olivia pretended that nothing had happened, but her mind was filled with intrusive thoughts. Suddenly, Olivia noticed a letter in the bouquet, in which Lily said that her feelings for Ian were sincere and pure. The heroine crumpled up the letter and ordered her to get ready to leave for the town's popular pastry shop. Arriving at the place, the girl was struck by the beauty of the vacant rose. It was the place where small restaurants and pastry shops started to open, and then many tea shops opened their doors as well. The rose gained popularity and even supplied their products to the imperial palace. Olivia marvelled at the views, for in her previous life she had never been in the Rouse. The Parnell family had no love for sweets, so the girl could taste them only at tea parties and banquets. The heroine ordered a cake at the nearest store, wanting to leave a message on it. The girl ordered the "I don't care" inscription on the cake. Olivia took the cake for Jan, but she had no idea if he would like it. The heroine recalled how she was cold to Jan, while he was sensitive and expressed complete trust in her, and even generously invested in her future business. At the entrance to the manor, Olivia met an aristocrat who introduced herself as Liliana Whitefall, the youngest daughter of the Marquis, adding that she and Grand Duke Tyrone were quite close. The heroine began to ask what business the girl had come to see him on, for she could not believe that she had shown up at her house uninvited. Lily couldn't listen to these rumours about her dear friend anymore, so she decided to tell Olivia everything, telling her to leave the Duke alone. To save the reputation of the girl, heroine wanted to pretend that she had not heard it, however. She should not have behaved so recklessly. The aristocrat was sure that Olivia had no feelings for Jan, since she had been at the birthday banquet and had seen everything with her own eyes. The girl thought that the Duke was very kind and did not leave heroine, so it had to be her. Ian came out and Lily threw herself into his arms, for they had not seen each other for a long time. The man brushed her aside, saying that he'd made it clear long ago that he had no intention of seeing her, but she'd been showing up at his estate and being rude to his wife. Lily understood that Ian was uncomfortable with the rumours, but she was ready to support him. The Duke insistently asked Lily to leave, saying that he would not force her out, but if she ever disrespected his wife again, he would not stay away. The girl was pained to see how unhappy Ian was in his marriage, for she was sure he had been forced into it and could do nothing about it. Lily realised that the Duke wouldn't have agreed so easily, since she still remembered that day. Ian was shocked, while Olivia said that social society had a lot of rumours, and if a person had any influence at all, they were rumoured at least once, and people liked to talk behind other people's backs. The heroine assured that people wouldn't discuss their happy marriage, because they always found something to pick on and make a big deal out of it. But it was just a rumour. Olivia said that all the rumours about Jan were lies, and he was a wonderful husband, so she hoped that Lily would stop believing everything people said from now on. The heroine remembered the cake and decided to give it to the girl, because she could not invite her to tea. Seeing the inscription on the cake, the girl got angry, but she couldn't do anything. In the room, the Duke explained to Olivia that he hadn't invited Lily, but he still should have chased her away as soon as she showed up. The girl asked not to call Lily by an affectionate name, because it immediately made her mood go bad. The heroine and Romeo also called each other affectionately, because they were friends, but she didn't want to hear Jan call the aristocrat Lily. Olivia couldn't tell if she was jealous now, because she couldn't quite figure out how she felt. The girl had absolutely no experience in relationships, and her past marriage was hard to call successful. The Duke laughed, as it was the first time he had ever seen a man who didn't realise he was jealous. The heroine kissed Ian, and they both ended up in bed. The Duke assured that there was nothing between him and Lady Whitefall, for she was like a sister to him. But one day everything changed when Lillian learned that the imperial family's blood flowed in the man. The late Duke Tyrone thought that Ian was the Emperor's nephew. However, He never explained to the Duchess why he decided to take the child. The two men failed to surround Ian with care and attention. They died, and the man never knew the love of a parent. At their funeral, Ian met the Emperor for the first time, and it was then that he learned the truth. The Duke thought it was his destiny to be unloved, but then the Marquis of Whitehall came into his life. As soon as the man saw his brother's son, he accepted Ian without a second thought. After the death of his family, Tyrone Ian was placed in the care of the Marquis of Whitehall, and it was he who replaced his father. The Marquis genuinely cared for the Duke, so those were the best days of his life. He was so happy to have a baby sister as well, because thanks to all of them, he realised what it meant to be a family. However, as time went on, Ian began to feel guilty since he was not Duke Tyrone's son. He wondered what the Whitehall consorts would think if they found out. Eventually, Ian told the truth to the Marquis and his wife. Then the man rushed to embrace him, apologising for not noticing how difficult it had been for him. Thankfully, the Whitehall family didn't give up on Ian, and they only grew closer, but he never imagined what would happen next. One day, Lily forcibly put Ian on the bed, saying that she wouldn't mind becoming a member of the imperial family. The girl thought that the Duke had long dreamed of them becoming a real family. Only through intimacy and marriage could they truly become a family. The man could barely get out of bed, after which he hurriedly ran away. During that period of time, the Duke felt that he was really impotent. Because of the shock he had suffered, he could not have a normal relationship and was constantly haunted by the fear of intimacy. Olivia realised that if she were in Jan's shoes, she wouldn't like it either, that someone had snuck into her bedroom without her knowledge or consent and done something like that. After all, she'd been through it before. She was well aware of how humiliating it was. Jan had experienced it at an earlier age. The man said that it didn't end there, and they all continued to pursue him. Olivia realised that Lily wasn't the only one. Then Ian said that she was not only good-looking, but rich. Because of all of this, rumours of Duke's romantic affairs and being impotent were constantly circulating in the community. Now the girl knew everything, and because of his dark past, Ian didn't want to have children. So the man asked if Olivia would continue to love him after this. The heroine wasn't ready to tell everything about herself yet, but she was definitely sure that everything she went through was for the sake of meeting Ian. The next day, Prince Mayan from the Oars Kingdom arrived in the city. The passers-by thought that the man was from Germain Trading Company, which was the most famous trading company in the entire continent. There were rumours that this business was owned by the royal family of Oars, so one wondered what matter they had come to the empire for. It had been 20 years, yet this was the only place he had yet to look for his wife, named Melissa. 4 days later, it was time to meet James at the imperial palace. The Duke assured Olivia not to worry, for keeping calm was paramount to their cause. The girl believed that it didn't matter that James was selfish and stubborn, because once he saw Ian, he would back down. The couple sat silently across from the man, while Olivia thought about James's strange preferences in clothes. Olivia pushed the thoughts out of her head and noticed Stathis approaching. The prince said that although he had promised to mediate in the matter, they had to come to an agreement first. James didn't understand why Stathis would voluntarily intervene, only to resolve the matter peacefully. James believed that the marriage had been annulled illegally, but the Duke of Parnell's seal was on the annulment papers. The man assured her that the people who had used the seal without his knowledge had been taken into custody long ago. Olivia couldn't believe that the man wanted to save the marriage so badly that he'd taken his mothers into custody. Ian made it clear that there was no need to worry. And then the heroine decided not to try to understand James's motives, for now it was worth thinking about how to get rid of him once and for all. Stathis said that by going to the battlefield, James had permanently authorised the use of the seal by women. The prince gave Olivia his word, and she said that even if her life depended on it, she still wouldn't go back to Parnell Manor. James couldn't believe that Ian wasn't ashamed at all that he had stolen another man's wife while her husband was at war. The man had no desire for anyone to desecrate his family's honour. Duke Tyrone couldn't believe that James didn't know what Olivia was going through at Parnell Manor. The girl couldn't eat properly and endured constant rebukes and beatings. If Olivia hadn't experienced it personally, She would have found it hard to believe such a thing too. James wanted to get it all over with and return as soon as possible. However, Ian didn't realise what a difference it would make. When the Duke of Parnell returned in the past, Olivia had a real hell of a time. The man was assured that his stubbornness would get him nowhere, and it was easier to give up. James thought it unfair, yet the heroine married him, completely unwilling to do so. The girl knew the real man so well that she was turned away at the mere sight of him. Olivia said that she didn't know the real James, and that fact proved that their marriage was a mistake. Nothing had ever happened between them, as if they were strangers, so the girl asked for the whole farce to stop. James left, and the girl accidentally spilled tea and began to apologise. Instead of apologising, Stathis suggested that Olivia divorce the Grand Duke and marry her. Ian asked to stop saying such things, for it was rather rude to suggest divorce to the newlyweds. There was nothing strange about having both male and female partners, and the Grand Duchess was on friendly terms with Stathis's fiancé, so they could live as a threesome. The Duke asked Olivia not to fall for the prince's sweet speeches, as unlike that rude man, there was no way he could abandon the girl. In the end, Heroine didn't think James would back down for nothing. The prince said that Ian was now indebted to her. Given what had happened, Duke Parnell was unlikely to return to the north, so Stathis would have to find someone willing to go in his place. The man was sure that there would be enough volunteers, but there might not be someone as eager as James among them. Olivia thought the man really wasn't greedy, but there wasn't a single person on the Parnell estate who demanded a fair wage for his hard work. While Olivia had been the Duchess of Parnell, it was this part of her life that had been the most difficult. The heroine was forced to do it for the prosperity of the duchy, but people still kept slanting their eyes at her. Olivia didn't want to take dirty money, but her husband risked his life, so he was worthy of such a reward. From the outside, it seemed that the imperial family treated James as a weak-willed man, but the girl didn't think so. Although the man was now obsessed with the heroine, she believed that in time she would understand everything and would be able to meet another suitable person. Stathis saw another solution to the problem, with them needing to send for Marquis Whitefall, but it was unknown where he was now. After all, this situation had arisen because of Ian, so he should be the one to take responsibility and find the Marquis. Olivia had never once heard that the Marquis of Whitefall was in hiding, but in fact, they had even run into each other once. The reason for the man's absence was closely related to what had happened to Ian in the past, which made it appear that Lillian Whitefall was the problem. They definitely hadn't met in a past life, or she would have definitely remembered such a beauty, even if she had just walked by. But Liliana's name was unfamiliar. Suddenly, Olivia remembered that Lily had become the Queen of Polka. The heroine had heard that the girl had wished for it so much that she herself had offered her candidacy. It was incomprehensible why Lillian suddenly wanted to become queen of another country without even knowing the language. As Olivia supposed, the status interested Lillian more than the person herself. The Duke looked at his wife and began to worry about her, for she looked very pensive. The girl confessed that she wanted very much to be Ian's support, wished to surround him with love so that he would no longer be tormented by his past. Without asking anyone, Stathis said that Duke Tyrone was leaving for the north. Later in her office, Olivia thought that the prince wouldn't make a joke like that. There were several territories in the empire where military conflicts periodically broke out. Among them, the north was the most favourable, because it was the easiest to gain power and glory there. It was important to put there a man who would be loyal and would not become a threat to the throne in the future. Because of this, the imperial family was forced to take the matter seriously. The girl realised that their marriage with James was not solely his fault. Earlier, Olivia had hoped that if she pestered him with a request to return, then sooner or later he would get tired of it. But the man was adamant. Everything could have turned out differently if he'd paid a little attention, but now Olivia realised that leaving him at this point in her life had been the right decision. Suddenly, Ian came over and asked her to go on a date. It was unexpected for the heroine, and she wanted to refuse, but the Duke insisted. Jan suggested going to some restaurant after they visited the opera, plus they could look at a department store later. Olivia agreed to the date, and the couple went into town. The man began to ask the girl about what she was like as a child. The heroine recalled that she had always been lonely, but Herzog said that she just spent all her time reading books. The girl was surprised by the beauty of the future department store, which was soon to be completed. Olivia realized that it would take a very long time to hire the right number of people. It was not easy for Jan now, but if he had been forced to go to war, the girl would not have survived it. The Duke saw his wife's sad face, and taking her hand suggested that she go inside the department store and look around. At this time, Viscount Florence sat in the pub and cursed Olivia. Thanks to Jan, he was forbidden to visit the capital. The man thought that the heroine had no right to do that to her own father, even though she had become the Grand Duchess. Suddenly, James approached the Viscount and offered an interesting deal. Jan showed Olivia the department store, saying that the first floor contained various stores for cosmetic products, the second floor only for women's clothing, and the third floor for men's clothing. The building was well designed, so they could make seating areas. The Duke said that this department store would definitely be in demand and bring in a good profit. The girl was sad, thinking that when Jan went to war, they would not be able to talk like this for a long time. She had just found her happiness, but she had to be alone again. Olivia ignored Ian and decided to kiss her to bring her to her senses. Justifying herself, the girl said that she was worried about what would happen when the department store opened. The Duke informed her that although the counter wasn't completed yet, it was already gorgeous, so she shouldn't worry about it. Ian asked his wife not to put everything on her shoulders, and if she had any difficulties, she could just tell him. Afterward, the couple went out for tea, while Olivia said that she hadn't expected a date right outside the department store. The Duke prepared tea from the tea store on the first floor and let the girl enjoy it. Finishing her tea, the heroine still decided to ask her husband when he planned to head north, for she needed to know so she could prepare. The girl asked not to worry about her and the duchy, as the servants were well trained, so they shouldn't have any problems in management. Olivia realized that if Ian had to go, she had to be strong. Plus, she had run the Duchy of Parnell herself in a past life, so she already had experience. The Duke stood up, saying that he couldn't understand why the heroine wasn't worried about him. After all, he could have been injured there. It was unknown how many years they would be away from each other, but they had no choice. The girl knew that Ian was having a hard time right now, so she tried to stay calm. The man had said that he was Olivia's husband, and he didn't want his wife to keep things to herself. She didn't have to handle everything alone. The Duke admired what an ambitious wife he had, but sometimes he thought he lacked experience. Olivia was sorry for that, and though it wasn't easy, she couldn't do otherwise, and now she was glad she could rely on her husband. The girl was afraid that she would break down if she told about her worries, so she hid them deep inside. But now it became clear to her that next to the Duke, she could finally relax. After a while, Ian began to say that they should hurry to the opera, but heroine suggested that they not go to it, because her husband was not a fan of opera. The Duke didn't understand how Olivia knew about it. Once in the past, the girl had visited the opera, and the expression with which Jan sat was simply impossible to forget. Although he did not like opera, but to cheer up his wife, he took a ticket. This gesture showed how much they cared and appreciated each other, so they always had to be in order. Suddenly, Prince Mayan passed by the couple and saw his wife Melissa in Olivia. One day, a prince of a distant land fell in love with a simple girl. Their love was so strong that soon the girl announced that she was expecting a child, but the royal family was against their union because of the girl's low status. Then the prince decided to give up the throne to be with his beloved. One day, while the prince was away, his family brought the girl back to her homeland. The prince and his beloved missed each other very much, but they never got to meet. More than 20 years have passed since then. The action goes back to some time ago, when the prince's assistant talked about the country's developed market economy and that they should not have worried about business. The man really wanted to find his wife and child in the empire. Even if she got a man she loved, the prince would still want to meet his child. Suddenly, the man noticed a strange building that was under construction. Then the assistant explained that it was a department store. It was a building that would house many stores at the same time. The prince was going to open such a place, but someone had already beaten him to it, and he was beginning to think that there had been a leak. The man started to ask who had thought of it, and the assistant pointed to Ian and Olivia, who had met him. The prince was shocked by the heroine's resemblance to Melissa and wondered who this woman was. The counsellor told him that the girl was the Grand Duchess of Tyrone, the daughter of a poor viscount, and the prince ordered to find out everything about her and arrange a meeting with her. After the date, Olivia tried to spend more time with Ian. She thought he liked spending time alone, but the Duke began to complain that they hardly saw each other. The maid thought Ian was often upset, because even now Heroine was personally packing his things. It was Olivia's habit, for when James was up north, she sent him the things he needed once a month. She hadn't been brought up to be the hostess of the Parnell household, so she had to pack James's luggage herself. Now the girl realised that it was just another way of messing with her. The maids took the initiative and began to organise the Duke's things, while the head maid said that the Duke might think Olivia didn't care. She knew that the Duchess was not happy, but to Jan it looked different. The heroine realised that from the outside, everything could look like this, so she decided to clear up this misunderstanding. The girl got ready to talk to Jan, but outside the door of her horror was waiting for the butler, who brought a letter from the imperial palace. The emperor was in good spirits and invited his daughter-in-law to a tea party in 2 hours. Later, in the carriage, Ian asked the girl not to worry, for they were one family. In the palace, the emperor sympathised with Olivia because he learned that she was very worried about the Duke's departure to the north. Of course, the heroine did not want to part, but she had time to prepare for it. The emperor had said that he shouldn't have told the crown prince, but now there was no reason to worry anymore, since they had already settled everything with Jan. Suddenly, a servant brought an urgent document that the emperor had to approve. The man left, and Olivia ordered Ian to explain everything well to her. The Duke admitted that he was wrong, but the girl was not satisfied with this answer, because she specifically wanted to know what Ian was apologising for now. The man confessed that he apologised for asking his brother to help and not warning his wife. The heroine did not understand why, when they had problems, Jan always ran to the emperor. Even though he was happy to help them now, there was no telling how long it would last, because if the Duke did something wrong, things could end up in a dire situation. The man understood that, but His Highness had exaggerated a bit, and besides, he didn't want to go north himself. Olivia decided to apologise too, for being selfish and thinking only of herself. James had always willingly left the north, and he hadn't even realised that it was easy enough for him to say no. Duke Parnell was having a harder time than he had in Aramir, which meant he was thinking of going home. The Emperor had returned, and Heroine asked him to reward Duke Parnell, who had defended the north at great risk to himself. James rarely mentioned what had happened on the battlefield, though he was always silent. Though physically he was fine, however, he suffered from mental trauma. Olivia insisted that the Emperor should reward Duke Parnell for everything he'd done. The girl assured him that her attitude toward James had nothing to do with it, and the request was akin to the butterfly effect. His Majesty had simply taken advantage of a child who couldn't say no. It all started the moment the Emperor sent the green youngster to the battlefield, so he was being unfair to James. The man had agreed, but he wanted one favour from Olivia in return. Olivia realised that the Emperor might have been right. Still, James was not a man to give up so easily, but the man was well aware that his emotions were ruling him right now. Duke Parnell was too young when he had to go to the battlefield, so if the Emperor wanted his subjects to be loyal to him, he should have rewarded James for his services. Ian thought that there was no need to worry about it, and besides, there was no way the Duchy of Tyrone would agree to James's demand. The Emperor thought for a moment and asked the girl what kind of reward the man deserved. Olivia told him that once James had fulfilled his destiny, he was to be paid 10,000 dirks and given a sword from the Emperor's treasury. Further, the man had to decide for himself, but he must realise that luck would not always be on his side, and in the end, even the nobles would have nothing to object to. What was interesting to the Emperor was that after a little investigation it became clear that the girl had nothing to do with Duke Parnell. However, after observing them, it seemed to His Majesty that they were quite close. The Emperor said that James had agreed to go north on the condition that he marry Olivia. Ian trailed off, not understanding what the man meant. The heroine couldn't believe it, because she thought they got married because they were born on the same day. Some moments were very different from what had happened in the past, and that could be the reason why Olivia chose a different path in this life. The Emperor found it curious that James had fallen in love with heroine at first sight. In the carriage, the girl still could not forget His Majesty's words, but she was sure that she and Duke Parnell had never met before. The man had not even been at the wedding ceremony, and they had met 10 years after the wedding. However, at the first meeting, James behaved very naturally, as if they had known each other for a long time. Then the girl realised that most likely this life of Duke Parnell was not the first. Ian had said that if Olivia was worried about something, she could always share it with him. The girl apologised, for she wasn't sure she was ready yet. The heroine had travelled back in time and married Duke, and now it seemed to her that her ex-husband had travelled back in time as well. Olivia felt awkward alone with Ian for the first time. Ian hoped that he wouldn't have to talk, but the real reason he didn't want to leave was that he didn't want to leave Olivia alone with James. The heroine said that she was sorry for making her man worry, after which they enjoyed each other. The next day, there was an article in the newspaper that the Duke of Parnell had been given the Sword of Tomorrowland. Even though Olivia was the Duchess of Parnell, she didn't know anything about weapons or war. James didn't want the girl to be interested in those kinds of things. The award ceremony, where the sword was going to be presented, was decided to be held in the temple instead of in the palace. This was done so that anyone who wanted to attend could come and watch it. The emperor was pretty good at politics, so he made the awarding as a gift for loyalty. He wanted to show that he valued the loyalty of his subjects. The emperor acted like a simpleton, but in reality he was not. The Duke spoke of Olivia's irresistibility, for he feared that some would not be able to take their eyes off her. Ian assured her that the girl couldn't ignore it, especially now that James had gained even more influence. Everyone took their seats, and among the aristocracy, Olivia noticed a delegation from the Kingdom of Ors. Usually there was a banquet in their honour, but this time they were part of the ceremony. The heroine thought it was a wise decision, because otherwise she would have had to allocate more money for the organisation of the banquet. James came out, and the girl reluctantly began to think about the man's unkempt appearance, and began to empathise with him a little. The emperor announced that now that the great sword had found its master, it was time to lead the army and defeat the enemy. Just as Olivia had thought, the emperor was playing simpleton, for now he had decided to say straight out that it was time for Duke Parnell to go back north. Suddenly, a worried Viscount Florence appeared in the doorway. Ian immediately shaded his wife, trying to speak to him politely. The Viscount made a scene, pretending to be worried about his daughter, who was said to be a vicious woman. The girl could not understand how a man could dare to come to the temple and talk such nonsense. The Duke said that he did not care what the Viscount thought, because the divorce from James had been approved by the Emperor. The Viscount declared that the marriage to the Grand Duke was invalid. The girl assured him that she did not need her father's approval, but the latter said that heroine was a minor when she decided to divorce, so she needed his permission. Olivia was 40 years old when time suddenly turned back, so she continued to act like an adult after her return. The Duke approached the man, saying that he had been overindulgent. Here the girl thought James had set the whole thing up, but the man didn't know what she was talking about. Olivia believed in the knight's honour, plus they had discussed it with Kennen, and he had tried to warn her, but she had only waved it off. The Viscount fell to his knees, telling His Majesty that he was against this marriage, so it was null and void. The Emperor became angry and stated that the man was simply ridiculous. The Viscount had dared to come to the temple and ruin the ceremony, so he was going to suffer the Emperor's wrath. The Emperor said that James had already crossed the line, but he asked him not to go by his emotions and to be rational. There were many people watching them now, including foreign ambassadors. They might have thought that the Emperor had used his power to approve the divorce of Duke Parnell and his wife, so Olivia had to resolve the situation. The girl stated that they were both wrong, as the Viscount was not her biological father. The secret she had kept in her past life was now to be known to all. Olivia revealed that her mother, Melissa Orlando, was the older sister of Viscountess Florence. Since she had died just after the girl's birth, her aunt had taken her in to raise her. The Viscount claimed that it was all a lie, and then the Emperor asked who Olivia's real father was. The girl's mother had only told about who her father was before she died, and her aunt knew practically nothing about him, so it was unlikely that she could find her father with the help of an old necklace. However, her life had already changed, so she had nothing to regret. Even if they never met, the girl was not going to live in the shadow of her past. Suddenly, Prince Main interrupted the Emperor's conversation, saying that he was Olivia's father. The heroine had met the prince in a past life. The girl cried then, and he held out a handkerchief to her. Olivia reminded the man of his daughter. Afterward, they talked some more, and the prince was very kind to her. He said that he was travelling the world in search of his daughter. For now, the man had decided to support his daughter's choice, and he hoped the Emperor would take note. All this gave the Emperor a headache, so he said they would not discuss the subject, after which he advised James to prepare for the consequences. The Emperor left, leaving the Viscount in the hands of Ian, who ordered him to be detained. Suddenly, James began to ask why the girl had never told him about it. Ian said that James's marriage to Olivia had been dissolved, and she no longer belonged to him, after which he began to hint at a kiss. The girl took offence, saying that if he did, he wouldn't talk to him for a month. When all the guests had left, the girl asked Mayen if he was really her father. The prince smiled and held out a necklace that was exactly the same as Olivia's. The man had made them himself in duplicate. He hadn't been sure of his guesses at first, but when he saw the necklace, he knew at once that Olivia was his daughter, the one he'd been searching for all his life. At that moment, the heroine realized that if she didn't return the necklace, she would never be able to find her father. The girl became emotional and began to hug her long-lost father. In the evening, Olivia awoke in her room, where the Duke explained that she had fallen asleep in the carriage and he had carried her. Jan told Heroine that none of this was her dream, and she had really met her father. Olivia shared that she had always been very scared, because every time she woke up, she was afraid that it was only a dream. She was afraid that she would become that Olivia again and go back to her old shabby room. The heroine didn't know if she had the right to be with Ian. The man assured that everyone had the right to be happy, and Olivia included. Ian was lonely, and people considered him impotent, but the girl made him happy. From such speeches, the couple got excited and spent the whole evening together. At night, the Duke wanted to see Olivia's embarrassed face once more, for it was very sweet to him. Suddenly, Kenan informed him that there was a matter which required the personal intervention of the man. The councillor said that everything was ready, but the servants had difficulty, for the Viscount was resisting. The Duke said that Olivia was the only person he had feelings for, so he didn't understand why everyone suddenly thought they could test his patience. A little while later, the Viscount knelt to argue that Ian couldn't get rid of him so easily, because as a father, he cared about Olivia. Ian revealed that Heroine had found her biological father, so Viscount couldn't call her his daughter. Viscount was furious, saying that Ian had never paid him for his youngest daughter, since he hadn't consented to her being taken. The Duke wanted to kill the man on the spot, but Olivia asked him to stop. The girl knew that Ian had promised the Viscount a luxurious estate and a certain amount of money if he agreed to leave the capital. The man assured that it was not a business proposal, but an order. From those words, Olivia realised that the man had decided to join forces with James. The Duke said that the heroine could do whatever she wished with the Viscount, whereupon the girl ordered Kenan to give part of her possessions to Ian, and the man to be sent to the lands of Roland. The Viscount did not understand why he should go to the lands of Roland, but from that moment on, his life belonged to the Tyrone family. The next morning, Olivia woke up and found a puppy on her bed, which reminded her of someone. Suddenly the girl woke up for real, and lifting the blanket saw Duke sleeping. Before, Heroine didn't like having someone else in bed with her, and now she felt lonely if the man wasn't around. The Duke woke up and immediately began to ask about Olivia's well-being, because it was not easy for her to make this decision. The girl said she was determined, for the evil that the Viscount had done in her past and present life had left many scars not only in her heart. Still, he didn't want to lose the lifestyle that Parnell House had guaranteed him. But that day, Olivia realised that because of her mercy, the people she cared about, might suffer. The Duke assured her that his wife had done the right thing and that it was necessary to get rid of such a terrible man. At breakfast, the Duke said that he had to go to the lands of Lawrence because he had business there and needed to set up operations. He was supposed to leave even earlier, but due to the backlog of business, the trip had to be postponed. Jan said that he would be gone for 2 weeks as there were a couple of issues he had to take care of. Annie wanted to go too, but Ian argued that she needed to keep an eye on the department store and keep an eye on her sister. Annie was used to being alone, and the problem was that she and Olivia were like strangers. Yesterday's incident had already spread all over the Empire, so the girl was bound to be aware of everything. Olivia still needed to spend time with her father, who had come to the Empire as an ambassador, and it was unknown how much longer he would be in the Empire. After his business, the Duke was proposing a wedding trip to the sea. At that moment, the girl realised that Ian was her true destiny. Later, the couple met with Prince Mayan, at which Olivia immediately started shedding tears. The man handed the girl a handkerchief, and she remembered that a similar situation had already been in the past. The heroine began to think about what would have happened if her father had found her earlier, and there was no her annoying mother-in-law. Seeing all this, the Duke added that his wife rarely cried, and it looked like she was really pining for her father. The man was grateful to fate that Olivia had grown up to be a strong woman. The prince once again introduced himself as Charles, of the Kingdom of Oz, who had the title of Duke of Mayan. Ian wondered why the man had separated from his wife. The prince confessed that he had lost Melissa through his own stupidity. She was a very curious girl, dreaming of seeing the world, so she ran away from home, and one day the road led her to the Kingdom of Oz. She didn't know much about the world, so she didn't know it took connections to survive in a foreign land. When Charles first met Melissa, she had been robbed and was crying in the middle of the street. To the man, she was beautiful and innocent. To him, who had royal blood in him but dreamed of freedom, Melissa was like a breath of fresh air. They became close, talking about the countries the girl had visited. The royal family was against this relationship. The heir to the throne and a poor traveller with no lineage or name could not be together. Realising that his family was adamant, Charles stole Melissa and sent her elsewhere. Because of all this, he was glad that he was able to meet his daughter at least now. The man had said he would stay in the Empire for a month, so he hoped that during that time they could get to know each other and grow closer. At this time, Stathis was watching the angry emperor. The man began to think that he had rushed Ian's wedding after all. He had never imagined that Lady Florence's biological father would turn out to be a member of the Oz royal family. It was a momentous occasion for the imperial family, only to benefit them. The emperor was furious at the thought of what would happen if Tyrone had a son. Stathis said that no one would dare to go against his majesty as long as the crown prince was alive. In terms of commitment and lineage, everything was perfect, so Stathis didn't understand what the emperor was worried about. The man assured her that since he had taken the right to the throne from Jan, he could take it from him as well. The prince realised that it was about fear, but the emperor was making it look like it was for her future. Stathis asked not to worry, saying that he would solve the problem. She had to make sure that not even the emperor could stand in her way of ruling. Annie had been living like a fairy tale lately, reading as much as she wanted and learning as much as she wanted. Her father had forbidden her to study or pick up books. The Viscount burned all the books so that the girl could not read anymore. If Olivia hadn't taken her away, she'd still be living in that hell. Rita's roommate asked Annie about her sister, who wasn't her sister now. Such a statement came as a shock to all the students in the class. There was talk that Viscount Florence had tarnished his honour and caused a scandal at the ceremony in honour of Duke Parnell. In the evening, Annie sat in the garden and cried, remembering the conversations of her classmates, who said that the girl was not Olivia's own sister, and therefore would hardly be able to continue living with her in the same house. Suddenly, Eric came up to her, asking why the girl was sitting on the cold ground. After a little thought, the young man began to take off his shirt, which made Annie jump back a few meters in great embarrassment. Eric apologized, saying that he just wanted to offer to lay his shirt on the ground. The girl revealed that she had been sitting alone, as rumors had reached her that her sister was not related. Because of this, She pondered alone in the garden about how she should proceed, for since they were strangers to each other, she shouldn't burden the heroine. Eric thought Olivia didn't think so, but since Annie knew everything, she had to think about what she should do next. The girl didn't want to leave Olivia because she valued every moment they spent together. Eric suggested that Annie discuss her worries with the heroine. They were quite close, as sisters were supposed to be, so it was necessary to just tell Olivia how the girl felt. Annie then went to see heroine, but as soon as she reached the door of her room, all her determination vanished. Suddenly, the girl herself came out of the room and invited her sister to tea. During the conversation, Olivia realized that the girl was upset because she already knew everything. The heroine knew that Annie had a conversation for her since she had come to her, but still she wanted to start first. Olivia told her sister about her birth, her mother's death, and meeting her birth father, and how Annie's mother had taken her away, eventually adding that she considered the girl her own sister. Annie confirmed that she had come to talk about it, thinking that she should go back to her brother and father. Olivia anxiously asked why the girl was unwilling to stay by her side. Annie believed that heroine no longer had any reason to be responsible for her. Olivia said that there were different families in the world, and some of them were related by blood, and others were related by blood. And it didn't matter whose child you were, the important thing was that they cared for each other. The heroine felt that Annie didn't have to be indebted to her, because it was enough for her to keep her happy. Suddenly, the girl decided to find out if Olivia was planning to have a baby. When the baby was born, Annie wanted to babysit them, plus she wanted to choose a name for it. A few days later, it was time for Ian to leave, which made the heroine feel bad. The Duke was worried that they wouldn't see each other for a long time and wanted to hug the girl, but she asked him not to come any closer so that Jan wouldn't get infected. Annie overheard the conversation and promised to take care of her sister as she was studying healing herbs. Olivia kicked everyone out of the room and began to think about the past. After a while, the Duke left, and Olivia's mind went blank, after which she fainted. When the heroine woke up, Annie ran to her and began to embrace her, because the girl lost consciousness and did not come to herself for a long time. Olivia herself did not know what happened because she just lost control over her own body. The maid came to tell her that while the heroine was unconscious, Charles Mayonnaise came to see her. He did not leave the girl for several hours, surrounding her with care and attention. The man said that he could not stay because of an important meeting, so now it was necessary to write him a letter. While Olivia was unconscious, nothing happened in the mansion, but the councillor wanted to talk to her, and Romeo Alquizus had asked for a meeting, so he should have met him first. Later, Romeo came in, saying that he was also suffering from poor health before. He was concerned when he heard that Olivia had passed out. Romeo wanted the girl to be a witness at his wedding, and since it was an important day, he wanted the heroine by his side. The man had already informed the Archbishop that Olivia would be a witness, so there was no way to refuse. The heroine was not going to refuse, and Romeo had no choice, because she was his only friend. The man started to leave, but Olivia knew that he wanted to discuss something else. Romeo had to hurry, so he told her that she would hear about it at the meeting in a few days. At it, the girl would be the representative of the Grand Duke. Olivia was sure that Romeo didn't want to tell her about it, so as not to make her worry, because most likely the aristocracy wanted to find a connection between the opening of the department store and the unexpected appearance of Prince Mayonnaise. Now that Ian was absent, Tyrone's political opponents were eager to seize the opportunity. The girl thought that everything would go well, because she was no longer the same 20-year-old Olivia Parnell who knew nothing about the world. Although much has changed since Heroine's return, but Romeo has remained the same. After that, the girl went to Kenin, who wanted to show what he couldn't help but shiver with excitement. With those words, the councillor held out the inventory of personal property document of Duchess Olivia Tyrone. In it, it was written that the girl would pass on the Sengerman Trade Guild with a fortune of 100 million. Olivia hadn't officially become the successor yet, as she hadn't been feeling well lately. It was impossible to have a ceremony and do the paperwork, but now that she had recovered, she needed to go through the formal succession process. Now the heroine understood why Kenin was twitching his shoulders so cheerfully. Some of this property could be used in the tax laws of Oz. Kenin was a very capable assistant, for in just 3 days he was able to sort everything out with a single piece of paper. The girl began to wonder if she deserved all this. Everyone said that their meeting with her father had been very touching, but she had done nothing for him. Kenin said it wasn't all property, and to take possession of the trade guild one had to go to the realm of Oz. Olivia asked if she was entitled to it. Then the councillor told her that it was this succession document that Prince Mayan had brought with him on the first day. He said that he wanted to give it all to Heroine as soon as possible, and he was very excited. The man also asked her to tell him that he was sorry he couldn't take care of Olivia when she was sick. It had originally belonged to Heroine, so she could accept the inheritance without any remorse. Until now, it had all seemed like a dream, as if she would wake up and none of this would ever happen again. At that time, the eagle delivered a letter to Jan that his wife had recovered. No matter how much the man tried to hide it, everyone knew that he was very worried about her. The Duke had many enemies in the Empire, so he didn't have to reveal his feelings for Olivia, and now they could target not only him, but her as well. And the most important and dangerous enemy was the one with the highest position in the capital. The soldier offered to wait a little while so that Yang could return to the girl, but he had to prepare himself faster than his rival would strike. If the man had said they were going to the principality together in such a situation, the Emperor would have expressed reasonable suspicion. Though Ian was worried, it was the only place he could keep Olivia safe for now. Suddenly, the Duke received another letter, and the man decided it was time to get rid of the shadow. In the morning, the maid woke Heroine up early, as she had to attend a meeting. Olivia had been very busy lately, so she hadn't had time to sleep properly. For the past few days, she and Kenin had been up all night. The girl wondered if her father would come to the meeting. He lived in the palace now, so it was possible to say hello, even if he wouldn't be present at the meeting. Olivia met James near the palace, who didn't expect to see the girl at such an event. While they were both in the capital, it was expected that they would run into each other one way or another, but Olivia didn't think it would be like this. On the way to the study, the girl asked the man to correct a brooch that was askew. James was having a bad time keeping track of it, and there was no way he could get used to it. The Duke said that Olivia was very beautiful, but the girl assured that she did not need compliments. The heroine leaned on the railing and she felt very bad. Later in the office of the Marquis, Roland decided to have a little conversation with the girl. The man was only at the wedding, so he thought that Olivia did not remember him. Suddenly, the prince and the emperor entered the room, whereupon the man announced the start of the 4th meeting. His Majesty said that the return of Duke Parnell had created a breach on the northern front, and someone must take responsibility for it. James said that he had spent 5 years in the north, so he thought he had sufficiently demonstrated his loyalty to the imperial family. The emperor assumed that the Duke was reluctant to return, because of the resentment caused by the dissolution of his marriage. The man refrained from answering, after which the Jurius family offered to entrust the matter to them, for their family had been loyal to the emperor for generations. His Majesty thought about the matter for a long time, and finally came to the conclusion that the problem was caused by the Tyrone family, so it was up to them to handle the matter. With these words, the emperor wanted to say that Duke Tyrone should join the army and lead the battle. Suddenly, Romeo decided to speak up, saying that there were rumours that he was inferior, so people doubted his abilities. A man during this northern expedition would like to prove his abilities. After the meeting, Olivia asked her friend how a child who cannot properly take care of himself can go to war. The outcome of the meeting was quickly decided by Romeo speaking on his own behalf, and the reasons were obvious. Alciges was a spineless man who had never once held a sword in his hand. If he went to war, he would die on the first day. After Romeo's statement, this matter turned into a battle of interests, because if he died, the Empress's seat would be vacated. Stathis wondered what the young man was thinking when he made such a choice. Romeo trusted Olivia so much that he was willing to go to a battlefield he'd never even remotely seen, because she was his only friend. The young man argued that he, as well as Ian, had no combat experience, so he couldn't let Heroine lose her husband. He'd made that decision because of his position, and he wasn't making any sacrifices because of it. Stathis needed to talk to Olivia, and since the conversation might take too long, they decided to go somewhere else, because there were too many ears around them. The prince was not interested in what Jan was up to. She only wanted to know what Olivia would do. Judging by the girl's experience, so far, the relationship between Jan and Stathis was not close, but it could not be called terrible. After a bit of thinking, the heroine decided to trust the prince. Olivia knew what Stathis had been like when she became emperor. She was a wise person who knew how to reward and punish, and now they were more like allies, until the heroine did something that could hurt her. So that Olivia could definitely trust the prince, she decided to tell one thing. Right now, the emperor was being very insistent with heroine. The girl wasn't sure, but she vaguely felt that something was wrong, and she was very uncomfortable around the emperor. The reason for this was Olivia's blood ties. The emperor had ambivalent feelings towards Jan because he had suffered from an inferiority complex all his life. The duke's wife, who suddenly appeared, was of noble descent, so the man was quite upset. It was hard for such a man to curb his emotions, especially if it was fear of loss, so he did not believe even his own child. Such people preferred a solution that would definitely secure his position. Olivia realized that the surest solution was to return her to Duke Parnell. The north was an important issue, but heroine's origins were a stronger nuisance in the eyes of the sensitive emperor. If Olivia's assumptions were correct, then Romeo's proposal to move north had messed up His Majesty's plans. Stathis had informed the heroine in advance, for she saw and understood what the emperor wanted, so she gave Romeo two options. He was left to tell about the emperor's intentions and help his friend or stay away. Olivia wanted to cry, thinking how to thank the man, but the prince reminded her that now they had to think how to answer the emperor. In order to calm His Majesty's fears, Olivia needed to show her loyalty. In the evening in her room, the girl wondered what Ian would do in her place. Though she was vaguely aware of the emperor's need to be wary, she would never have thought he would personally send Jan north. If Romeo hadn't intervened in the debate and offered his candidacy, Ian would have simply been killed in the war. Olivia was too relaxed, which is why she failed to appreciate reality, immersed in her marital happiness. She forgot that in this world you can't trust anyone, especially those who are higher and nobler in status. Suddenly Ian hugged the girl, but as it turned out, it was all a dream. Olivia missed the Duke so much that she was dreaming about him, so the girl wished that he would come back to her as soon as possible. In the morning, Prince Mayan said that he should be back in Orsay as early as next week, and then he planned to get official permission from the king to return to the empire. The man suggested that Olivia visit Orsay sometime, for that was why he had given her the mansion. The prince had 14 mansions in the capital alone, and in normal times he lived wherever it was most convenient for him. Charles claimed that as soon as the law on foreign inheritance was settled, he would give everything to Olivia. There was actually a more convenient way to do all this. The girl had to get citizenship in Orsay and officially register as his daughter. In many ways, having dual citizenship would be very convenient because the heroine could pay low taxes by moving assets around in a complicated way so she could engage in money laundering. Olivia wondered how such a gentle young man of royal blood, raised in affluence, had such a side to him. Suddenly the butler informed the girl that she had to go out as Lady Liliana Whitefall was coming to see her. At this time, the girl did not understand why it took so long for Olivia to come out to her. A few days ago, Lillian had been very angry with heroine, thinking that she should be his wife, since she was the one who had been with him for the last 10 years. The girl thought that a man like Ian should definitely belong to her. Even though he had a small flaw, that was why they had pushed Liliana away, fearing that his flaws would sadden her. The girl didn't believe it when the scandal broke out, and thought that this was Ian's way of just trying to protect her, but she didn't expect it to turn out this way, and in the end, they did get married. Lilina believed that Olivia was the witch who had enchanted Jan. The girl thought that the Duke wanted to make her jealous, and now she must stop him, for she was already being eaten up by jealousy. Suddenly, Liliana's mother entered the room, and they went to a family council. Her parents told her that Polka and Imperia had made an alliance, and as a symbol, it had been decided to have a marriage of convenience. The girl's father proposed to nominate her for the place of the Queen of Polka, as the Duke had no daughter, and influential aristocrats married as children. Liliana cheered up and decided to meet His Majesty in person to discuss everything. Despite the fact that Olivia was now spending time with her father, she had been informed of Lady Whitefall's visit, and there was only one reason for it. The heroine asked her father to wait for her in the greenhouse for a while she went to Liliana's house. Olivia thought it impertinent to break into their house, but the girl assured her that she had come for a visit. The heroine assured her that it was an intrusion, but Liliana asked her to stop being sarcastic because she was already very upset. The girls talked about Prince Mayan for a bit, after which Liliana decided to leave. Olivia stopped her, announcing that the duchy had sent a letter of petition for compensation to the Marquisate of Whitefall. This was done as compensation for the damage caused by the girl's intrusion into her home, as well as for encroaching on the Duchess's time. Olivia said that her time was very precious, whereupon she took out her watch, from which Liliana had to make a hasty exit before she was given a new bill. Leaving, the girl added that Ian would soon realise his feelings, because earlier he had said that he loved her. Olivia assured that a man who was about to marry the King of Polka shouldn't do that. Given what the heroine had said, she was sure that Liliana would view it with suspicion. If the chronology Olivia remembered was correct, Lady Whitefolk had married a prince of another kingdom in a previous life around this time. During the meeting, the issue of national marriage was brought up because of trying to avoid war. Liliana became Queen of Polka because of her desire for power, but in the end, feeling jealous of Ian becoming another woman's husband, she returned to her homeland. Olivia told the girl that he only loved Duke Tyrone's lineage, so next time she would not be able to enter their estate so easily. The maid came in, and the heroine asked her to tell Kenin to calculate the cost of the time, taking into account the sales at the department store opening next week. Suddenly the girl saw her saddened father, whereupon she fell into a daze. Liliana returned home, thinking that Olivia was much meaner and meaner than she had thought. The girl felt she needed to make a fuss in front of Prince Mayan. She had gone to the Emperor a few days ago, telling him about the possibility of marrying the King of Polka with the fact that she loved Ian. The Emperor claimed that as long as the marriage between the tyrants continued, Liliana had no right to interfere. It was a pity for the man, for if he had found out about the girl earlier, he would not have allowed the Duke to marry heroine. Now there was no other option but divorce. Liliana said that Ian was already so obsessed with Olivia's shenanigans that he wouldn't even consider divorce. The Emperor argued that divorce didn't necessarily require the opinion of two people, reminding her that Prince Marn would be very disappointed to hear that the Duke was engaged. A few days after Liliana returned home, a headline appeared in the newspaper that Prince Mayan was making an urgent return to his homeland. According to a credible source, the man was very disappointed to hear the story behind his daughter's marriage. Jan returned to the manor that evening, eager to find out if Olivia had been well in his absence. The reason for the Duke's hasty trip to the duchy was not the Emperor, but Olivia. The trip to the duchy was to punish Viscount Florence. No matter how strong Olivia was, he did not want to show her such a horrible picture. After all, the Viscount was a member of her family, with whom she lived for a long time. Although the man had not repented of what he had done to the last, but in any case, Ian did not want the girl to suffer from this sight. The Duke opened the door of Olivia's room and did not see her there, which made him furious. The maid told him that the girl had just suddenly disappeared without a trace. At this time, Heroine suggested her father to rest for a while and then continue their trip. A few days ago, Prince Mayan had asked the servant to wait, saying that he had forgotten the tea in the parlour. On the way, he overheard the girls' entire conversation. After Olivia spotted him, he explained it away by saying that he thought it was strange that Heroine had hastily suggested he take a walk around the greenhouse. There had been many rumours about Olivia and the Duke, and he had come from abroad, but even so he had heard all the vile interjections. Unlike the rumours, the two of them looked happy, but after what he'd seen, he was beginning to think those talks were true. Olivia urgently asked her father to take her to Orsay. She and her husband were now under the Emperor's supervision because of Jan's background and because she was the prince's daughter. Until a few days ago, Stathis had suggested two ways to escape the Emperor's oversight. Either the Trade Guild, which she would inherit from her father, should be handed over to the imperial family, or Olivia should simply disappear. There were rumours in the capital that the Tyrone couple had lovers. The girl was glad that her father supported the second plan. Currently distressed, Ian didn't understand how Olivia could just disappear. In the carriage, the heroine said that this was her first time travelling long distances, and so she was curious about everything. Suddenly, the carriage stopped as the wheel got stuck in the mud. Fortunately, there was an estate nearby, so the coachman sent people to ask for help. Even more unexpectedly, the owner of the manor, James, appeared in front of them. The girl knew he had his own lands, but she hadn't expected them to be stuck on just that. The girl's father was upset that she had to go through the hassle of waiting for the carriage. James said he was glad they were okay. Olivia didn't understand how Prince Maine could not know James. There was a buzz at the awards ceremony, but he still didn't recognize him. The Duke told her that he had left the capital to take care of his territory. The girl recalled that this part was her biggest problem in her life. After the death of the former Duke, this estate had been almost abandoned, and for a long time the estate had been run by a manager, and James, being the lord of these lands, had only received the deeds. In the process, periodic embezzlement of funds continued. Suddenly, James offered the travellers a rest at his castle before travelling further. Olivia didn't want to do that, so the man thought of her status and suggested using an alias. No one in these lands knew who they were, so they could rest comfortably. The girl said that they didn't know that for sure, and even if it was a villager, he had eyes and ears too, and even if that was what James was asking for, she wasn't going to stay in this castle. The caretaker came running, saying that they were in trouble and that the wheel was broken, and the travellers would not be able to continue for a while until they fixed it. At the same time, Annie could not breathe. When she had first seen Jan, he had seemed to her like an angel, but now he was akin to the Emperor. The girl told what she knew and then ran off, leaving Kenin alone. The Duke didn't know about the others, but the counsellor, something who knew the whole ridiculous plan and just quietly supported it, didn't even inform him. The man couldn't stop her, as she said she would definitely do it. Earlier, Olivia had said she would leave, but Kenin realised that Ian wouldn't let it go that easily. The heroine knew that, but they had to do it, for it was the only way they would be alive. The Emperor had the most control over them right now, so there was no point in their plan if she left with Jan. Kenin told Duke that this plan had been personally recommended by Stathis, which was why Olivia had been so insistent on executing the plan. Ian wanted to declare in front of the girl's father that he wished to be a real family, but right now he didn't even know where the heroine was. The Duke thought they might have left together, or at least Olivia might have said something to him before she disappeared. Jan ordered Kenin to request an audience with the Crown Prince, telling him that he wished to see him as soon as possible. It was strange to Olivia that she had come to the Parnell lands of her own free will. The prince noticed that the estate was very poor. Then James explained that it was because he had left the place unattended for a long time. Personally, Heroine hated the Duke's past. The fact that she had to endure a lot in the Parnell family was largely because of the man. From what Olivia had heard, the past Duke had died after a long battle with illness, having done nothing for the young son he'd left behind. Suddenly, the prince and the girl were horrified. Although execution ceremonies were usually seen as a kind of leisure activity in the capital, but the people living here clearly did not look joyful, but rather frightened. James earnestly executed the past lord overseeing the place. She couldn't sleep in her room at night, and her heart was beating suspiciously fast. There was a strange glow outside the window in the middle of the night, and as if some strange force began to move Olivia. Then she found James in the garden. The man ordered her to leave, then the girl told him that she didn't want to peek, and she had come down because she couldn't sleep. Olivia didn't understand what James was doing in the garden instead of sleeping. The Duke had personally executed the Lord today and tied a rope around his neck and pulled it tight. The girl bent down to pick up the fallen candlestick and noticed a rather familiar flower. James had ordered her not to touch it, for it was a special herb found only in the Parnell lands, and it became poisonous depending on how it was used. The heroine did not understand why something like this would grow in her lands, and although it was the first time she had seen the flower, there was a feeling that she had encountered it before. The Duke told her that although this poisonous plant could kill easily, it would actually cause a difficult death, and one would be in pain until death. James had seen it all with his own eyes when he had executed the Lord. The Duke wondered only one thing, whether the girl was at all sorry for leaving him. Olivia had said that in fact they might have been spouses, but in reality they were nothing more than strangers. The man realized it, but to him, their relationship was the only reason to hold on to the battlefield. After all that, their marriage had been invalidated, and he couldn't explain in words how much it hurt. Olivia pushed him away, telling him that she'd been horrible to give him a chance. She had a hard time living her life, but James assured her that women were his mariée, and people in the moment couldn't take to getting along with each other. Olivia said that people who were originally in different positions couldn't get along. She tried her best to please them, but they didn't care. The Duke thought the marriage was a combination of different elements, and sometimes that happens, and Olivia just shouldn't have given up. The girl didn't want it anymore, since she was the one who had tried her best, which was why their marriage had been invalidated. James stammered, saying that he thought heroin was fine. The girl felt bad this morning, and it was all because of a man. When James said he was thinking about the girl's well-being, she was furious. She did not understand why. If the Duke was not interested in her, he decided that she was fine. The heroine couldn't be happy after being given away in marriage like that. Even though she wasn't telling the situation properly, she hoped that the person who really cared about her would have been able to figure out what was going on their own. In her past life, after suffering through her 3 in-laws, Olivia had been distracted only by the fact that she was the perfect Duchess. The girl never thought of sending James a letter of complaint, and yet she never gave up hope that things would change when the man returned from the battlefield. When the Duke returned, he said that Olivia should be more patient. He hoped the girl realized that his mother's had about 20 years to live. At the moment, Olivia realized that James was still the same as he had been in her previous life, so she would prefer not to mess with him for a long time yet. At breakfast, Prince Marn expressed concern for his daughter. Then she said that she was fine, and she just hadn't slept well in an unfamiliar place. They needed to leave for Orsay as soon as possible, but the man was afraid that Olivia would find it difficult to travel in such a state. The heroine had been particularly tired the last few days, but she had to endure as long as she could, for if her father thought she wasn't feeling well, they could stay at the castle for a long time. The prince said that there would soon be a teleportation zone as soon as they left this place, so they could get there quickly. He heard that the carriage wheels were fixed, so they could leave right after they ate. When it was time to leave, James came in, saying that he was leaving with Olivia. The man assured her that he would just be helping them as an escort. The heroine thought that James set it up on purpose and planned it after he found out that they were travelling without guards. The girl understood that James wanted to be an escort, but it was too much for her as she didn't want to be around the man. The Duke asked her to think rationally and not put herself in danger because she didn't like him. The man said not to worry about how it would look, since there was no one in Orsay who knew him anyway. James showed his assistant's ID in case there was trouble at the border. The Duke assured them that they might set off, as he had business in Orsay all the same. They could say he was with them for company. The girl said he could do whatever he wished, whereupon they set off. It was at this time that Ian met the Emperor. The man asked not to worry too much, as Olivia could just be distracted for a while and then return. Ian had heard that the Emperor had made the decision to visit the Duke of Algiers. It was hard for the Emperor to tell right now, but the Duke shouldn't worry about it. The public opinion was that the Duke of Algiers was to be absent for some time and would soon return. The Marquis of Whitefall said he might go in His Majesty's stead. The man decided to go north himself, so as not to give up his daughter as Queen of Polka. At the mansion, most people believed that Olivia had left because of Liliana. Since it was secretly important, she only told the truth to Annie and Kenin before she left. Everything happened as Liliane came to the mansion and made a scene, however. Ian thought the Emperor had something to do with it. The Emperor had said that a man's feelings were irrelevant in a noble marriage, and if Liliana became Queen of Polka, it would be a good foundation. The girl would hardly refuse, however. The man thought that since it was a national wedding, it could not be formalised early. Ian expected the Marquis of Whitefall's expedition to take at least a year. The Duke had assured the Emperor that it was important to have a national marriage between the Prince and Miss Whitefall as soon as possible. The Duke thought the Emperor could smile all he wanted, for it was bound to be over soon.